Good evening. Welcome to the Milton, Massachusetts Warrant Committee meeting. It is March 9th, 2026. Karen, can you call us to order by calling roll?
Yes, we have Jay Fundley, Elaine Craighead, Lorraine D., Grace Doherty, Larry Johnson, Julia Maxwell is on Zoom, Brian McGuire. On Zoom, we have Lee Michael McLean, Ron Seal, and you have Nicholas Tagney and Cecile Yang. You have a quorum.
And James, they just showed up.
Oh, and James Lee Dassey.
So tonight we have multiple guests in the house. We have Meredith Hall, Chair of the Planning Board, and our Planning Director, who will remind me of her name.
Liz Manning.
Liz Manning. And then we also have Fire Chief Madden here to answer any questions we have about the fire stations. So we're going to start with the first thing on our agenda, which is the sign bylaw and planning people. And after that, we'll go to the fire stations out of respect for our guest time, and then hit the other items on the agenda. Yeah, if our two guests could come.
Sure.
And Larry Johnson has been doing quite a bit of work on this sign bylaw also, so I'll leave it up to you. Who wants to get us started? Assume we don't know anything since the last 6 months.
Either way, maybe I'll just do a quick introduction and then I'll let Larry take over. He's wonderfully provided a presentation. So the last time we came before you, we had a very lengthy sign bylaw, which some of you were here for, some of you are new to. But basically, and my apologies, you had received a red line version. So it was really marked up, probably very confusing. And what we have done is we realized there were a lot of questions on that particular article. There were a lot of definitions. There were a lot of more technical to the sign review, which would be appropriate for the sign review committee, but not necessarily to be in the bylaw. So the good thing is we now have KP Law, which is our new town council, because at the time we were in transition between our town councils. So we had two different people reviewing it, which added to some of the red lines. Our Carolyn Murray, who we've been working with, has been excellent. And so she was able to take the document, clean it up, say, get rid of language which was unnecessary, definitions which were just common sense, which just made it overall burdensome for an applicant to read. This way, it's about half the length of the previous article. The language is much clearer. It brings together sort of the goals, which were to take our bylaw as it currently exists, but then we had regulations which were outside of the bylaw to bring those all within our bylaw. Because everything, our bylaw, our guidelines, and then we also have a handbook which we give to applicants, we're all conflicting information for an applicant to come before. So we are fortunate enough to have a wonderful sign review committee, which Larry sits on. It was really important for us to make sure what was going into the bylaw is what the current practice is right now, as far as the sign review bylaw, really codifying the process as it currently exists, which was not the way the bylaw read. So now this bylaw makes it much more clear when an applicant comes in, what are the materials that the sign review committee will need. So they come in prepared so they don't waste their own time, they don't waste the sign review committee's time and the building commissioner's time and the director of planning. So this way, there's a streamlined process for an applicant when they come in and what the various steps are. And Larry will sort of outline that and go through that process, which is now embedded in the bylaw. Some of the things that we also added were the bylaw as we currently have it is just really silent on some things, which left a lot of gray area, and it left it up to the interpretation of whoever's on the sign bylaw or sign review committee, which really isn't fair to an applicant because just like the site review process, we want it to be consistent with all applicants. We don't want, if the sign review committee changes, for one applicant to have gotten, okay, we're gonna allow this, but then another applicant doesn't get that same benefit. So we wanted consistency, and this will make it clear what is allowed, what is not allowed. It cleans up some of the issues that we've seen in the past. Many of you probably remember recently there was a billboard that was proposed at 2 Granite Place, which was on the Neponset River, which caused a petition because people were very upset because it was on the, a billboard off the highway. Both the Dorchester side and the Milton side were very upset that a lit billboard would be put, and it would be, hazardous. The Neponset NEPRA got involved. And we just want to avoid those type of situations where we don't have to have residents having to create petitions to go to the select board to say, you know what, we really don't want billboards. We can have it in our language, in our bylaw. So we have tried to clean up, as many of you remember, Tim Zawinski, when the previous town planner has been saying this has been a mess for years. So we feel like we're really addressing a need which will improve the process, again, for an applicant, for our town staff, our building department, town planner, and the sign review committee, who does a really wonderful job. So hopefully this will be, this has been something that we've had John Zikowitz, the chair, at all of our meetings. We've had Larry to be involved, and so hopefully if there's any questions, we will be able to answer them this evening. So with that, I will.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can.
Larry, jump into it. Yep.
Yeah. You want to, our presentation?
Yes, another presentation.
At some point, I don't know if we have a template for presentations for the town, like a town template.
I hear a volunteer.
Oh. I'm terrible. I'm terrible at templates. I mean, it would look like that, so I don't think anybody wants that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Andrew, just in case nobody remembers who I am.
And have you as always?
Just making sure.
You haven't missed that many meetings. You're being too hard on yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, the way I saw it, it's just what Meredith said. It tries to clarify it, tries to make it easier for the applicants, and tries to sort of divide up what's required by law, the signs that are, the exceptions, the signs that are restricted and things like that, and but tries to divide that from the things that are more aesthetic and style. I mean, all of that goes into the style guide that the sign review committee and the applicants can use to design their signs in a way that's that's appealing, but maybe doesn't necessarily have the force of law. So that's basically what it does. Is it tries to clarify it. I mean, Meredith just covered all that, so you can just move to the next slide, Jay. I'll just talk through the proposed process and how it's different from the current process. So the proposed process is the applicant submits the materials to the building commissioner. The building commissioner just, goes through, make sure that they're all right, that everything's included, that they've checked all the boxes, and then forwards it on to the sign review committee. Sign review committee schedules a hearing. I think it's within 60 days, right? That's required in the law now. That was a sort of a new, that was a new addition to the law, is the requirement that the hearing is within 60 days. The sign review committee reviews the submission based on the bylaw, also the design guidelines, and general aesthetics. And then they'll make a recommendation to either approve it or for the applicant to make changes to the sign if it doesn't abide by the bylaw, or if there's something, even if there's something that maybe isn't necessarily illegal, but it's just a recommendation based on the aesthetic value of the sign review committee may make a recommendation based on that. If the applicant accepts the recommendations, then they'll resubmit their application. They'll make the changes to their design, resubmit the application based on those recommendations, and then come before the sign review committee again. If they're small enough, we can handle it by email. We don't necessarily need to have another meeting. If the applicant disagrees, which does happen, then this is a pretty big change to the current process. The current process is they would have to go to the select board to appeal. disagreements that they have with the sign review committee. And then the select board would have to review the materials and do it. The new bylaw changes that so that the appeal goes to the zoning board of appeals, which is much more appropriate for this kind of thing than having to take up time on the select board for this sort of thing for a sign appeal. If the zoning board of appeals determines whether to override the SRC recommendation, then it's approved, and they're able to put up their sign as designed. That happens. I'm sure that will happen on occasion. If they uphold the sign review committee's recommendation, then they'll have to go back and resubmit their application with the changes. And that's basically how it works. So it's the only real major change is, the timing is codified and the zoning board of appeals is new instead of the select board. So I tried to divide up the changes to the bylaw into basic, high level scope changes and then some detailed changes on the next slide. I may have used a slightly older version of this. I used a copy from the 22nd, and I saw that there was a more updated copy that came out today of the bylaw. So there may be some things that have changed since then. I don't know if there's been a lot of changes since the 22nd.
Some minor tweaks
Yeah.
after our last meeting.
Oh, okay. All right. I also, I used AI, but I reviewed it to do the comparison of the current bylaw. So, just in case there's anything that jumps out at you as being inaccurate, you can blame AI and not blame me. So the scope of the current bylaw only applied to business districts, whereas the new bylaw applies to any districts, residential and business districts. The definitions, I didn't actually compare the definitions, but in general, the definitions are much clearer. There are a lot more. There's not quite as many of them as there were in the old bylaw, but they're a little bit clearer and a little bit stricter. For example, billboards. The internally lit signs and reverse lit signs have always been a point of contention with the sign review committee. We don't generally approve any internally lit signs, so think like LED or neon. I don't think anyone uses neon anymore. It's usually LED now, but we don't generally approve those. We wanted to make sure that it seemed like you guys wanted to make sure that that was clearly defined in there, which is great. That should help the applicants quite a bit. So we spent a lot of time having that discussion on the sign review committee, but internally lit. The design elements, as Meredith pointed out, they were included in the bylaw in some cases, which doesn't really make any sense. I mean, you want a bylaw that's going to last forever. You want a bylaw that doesn't have to change every 20 years as LEDs are replaced with some other technology 20 years down the road, as neon was replaced with LED at some point in the past 20 years. So you want to make sure that that sort of thing is, the design features or design guidelines or technology isn't referenced in the bylaw, and you move those to the design guidelines, which are also part of the material that goes to the applicants. The permit process, I just went over that, goes to the zoning board of appeals now rather than the select board if they have an issue with the sign review committee's recommendation. They added special provisions for restaurants, fuel stations, B&Bs, directional signs within a directional signs like within a parking lot, say like pointing to the exit, things like that. That wasn't really clear in the old bylaw either. Fuel stations in particular, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but gas stations tend to have a lot of signs. So they wanted to specifically spell those out. Non-conforming signs, that's a big change. The non-conforming signs that predate the existence of any sign bylaw, the original sign bylaw, I don't think it's that old. I think it's maybe from the 90s. So there are plenty of non-conforming signs, that go back before the 90s. Changes only be allowed with good cause. Under the new bylaw, if a non-conforming sign comes before it wants to make a change, then it has to go through the sign review. It has to go through the process to make a change. And then there's a waiver to the size of the signs. It was sort of general in the old bylaw, and the new bylaw is specifically spelled out to 25% of the dimension, 25% of the area, or 50% setback. So, if you want to go to the next slide, Jay. The total sign area, that was a pretty major change, 2 square feet per linear foot of the facade. So it's kind of a strange calculation. I had to sort of map this out when I was reading this. That's been reduced to 1 square foot per linear foot. So if you have, say, 20 feet, if the front of your building is 20 feet from left to right, then your sign can be 20 square feet in size. Awnings were sort of vague in the old bylaw, and we spelled out in the new bylaw that awnings may contain signage. Window signs, you may cover, in the old one, you were able to cover 20% of the window. Now they're limited to 10% and may not block the middle third. So window signs are still allowed, which will help all the coffee shops.
And on commercial only. Yeah,
On commercial
specifically
only.
commercial. It doesn't affect residential.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, actually, if at the end of this, if you wouldn't mind clarifying the residential versus business district, because I'm not sure I can quite explain that. I might need you guys' help, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Sidewalk A-frame signs are allowed in the right-of-way with select board approval. 48 inches in height. The illumination rules, of which I talked about, the LED, neon, exposed bulbs, we generally approve only reverse lit or internal illumination. Internal illumination like LED or neon signs are generally prohibited and would require a special permit. They'd have to go to the zoning board of appeals.
What does reverse lit mean?
Reverse lit it's also called halo lit. So here's the sign, and then behind the lettering, it's lit, so that the edges of the lit letters are lit.
Okay, like
Yeah.
you might see in front of a church.
Backlighting. Have you ever, I don't think anybody's ever looked at the Ketchy's Law sign at the top of the Ketchy's Law building, over by well, next time, that's one of them. That's a good example. I'm trying to think if there's another example. We also allow signs to be lit by like scoop neck lighting, things like that. That's externally lit signs. You just have a sign and you have some light shining on it. I mean, that's a little bit more common than the reverse lit.
Like gas stations are excluded from the internal lighting.
Well, often those are, grandfathered in. Yeah, but no, we don't generally approve those either. No. If you look, the new Milton gas station, the new one on Canton Ave, the new gas station. Well, it's not new, but their signs are externally lit. But you're right, the ones over by East Milton Square, a lot of those are internally lit. Yeah, there are quite a few non-conforming signs. I call it the sleepy sign. It's Rebuilt Fitness now. I don't know what it is now, but that's the big one. That's the one that always comes up. Every time there's a new tenant in that building, it comes before the sign review committee and we reject their application, and then it gets it usually gets overruled by the select board, because generally the argument that the applicant makes is, well, I bought this building because it has a big lit sign on the top of it right next to the highway. And then, you have to kind of, we don't approve it because we're not allowed to approve signs like that. It's always been pretty clearly by law, that signs like that aren't approved, but generally we get overruled, which is fine. Freestanding signs, some of the gas stations have those. There wasn't any explicit limits on those in the current bylaw, but now they're capped at 8 feet in business districts. We do have some gas stations that don't conform with that as well. Right now, directory signs, we specified those 9 feet plus 1 square foot per tenant. I think the old law, that seems 6 feet height is a little restrictive for a directory sign. Think the fruit center or any of the medical buildings, they'll have a directory out front that shows you all the tenants inside. And then temporary signs are now allowed for 45 days. Must be registered and do not count towards total sign area. Now, I said earlier that this applies to all districts in the town, which I guess it does for commercial, but not for residents, right? That's what I wanted to clarify. This doesn't apply to residents.
It would, temporary signs, it primarily this was intended for commercial uses. Because excluded out of this, is, for sale signs would be included in a residential area. So say a house sells, we don't want that for sale sign to stay up more than 45 days after the house,
Okay.
after the property closes. So that would be one of the times, if they had maybe a construction, sometimes an architect sign or construction sign. We don't want that just being left out indefinitely. So this gives some input to that.
And it covers political science as well, right? So
And that would be the only, we don't want political signs staying up after the election's over. Everyone should clean up their signs. So,
So I know one of the things that, that town council had advised was to include a definition for sign non-commercial, which is a sign used as an expression of free speech. So you're gonna find that on page 1.
right.
And that is also,
Exempt,
listed under
that's
one of
under
the
exempt.
exemptions.
That's
Exactly,
right,
yeah.
that's right.
So, and then that points to this section, this new section 10, which kind of like gives sort of like the regulatory things that you can apply under that free speech, like whether it's like maintenance or it's, safety or what have you. So it has to be set back a certain amount, and it has to have that corner clearance issue, which can be an issue. So our town council worked really carefully on that one to make sure that that topic was covered, as well as we could anticipate, without restricting folks, First Amendment rights, essentially. There's also a section 11 for residential districts. And that basically spells out the types of signs that you might anticipate seeing. We talked a lot about some of like the new developments, like the memory care facility on Highland Ave and some of the 40B projects and et cetera. So we really wanted to make sure that we captured, some of those different types of uses that could be new, that aren't necessarily pre-existing non-conforming. There are a lot of pre-existing non-conforming signs already in the residential districts. So there's language there about that. And then it talks about how anything pre-existing non-conforming in a residence district would get handled as if it was in a business district. So I think the residential stuff we contemplated a lot of the different types of signs that you might see in a residential district.
Because we do see a lot of businesses that are existing in residential districts. So we wanted to make sure that they were treated fairly as a business, just the way a commercial district would be. So that language had never been in the bylaw before, so this allows for the clarity on that.
Great, great.
That's a
Ryan?
question. It's like an apartment building, but standalone. Is that considered, I should know this, like residential or business?
It could,
Residential, right? Well,
it's considered residential, but it could be in a residential location or a commercial location. So like I'm thinking of like Unquity House or, certain Quissit Brook, those may be, those would be residential zones. A lot of, what we've seen lately are in commercial districts. And interestingly, a lot of the multifamily housing does not have freestanding signs, and they don't, like if you look at the Hendry's building, or 440 Granite, they just have the address, the number, they don't have an additional sign. But there were times where, like for Winter Valley, for example, would be multifamily housing. And a lot of the dimensions that you see, we actually took off of, literally, people went out and measured the signs, like how tall is the Winter Valley sign? And it's bigger than you might think it is because it's on sort of a concrete, or a granite pile, sort of and set up on stanchions. So we actually looked at what the actual, and Liz put together a whole list of what our actual signs are. And that's where the reduction from the 2 linear feet to the 1 linear feet, because we realized it was much larger than actual signs that are on our buildings, and what it would allow for, which we just wanted to be careful of. There may be a building that's really large, like down in the lower mills, one of those like 60 Adams Street, or where the Muscle and Flow building, huge buildings, which would allow for a massive sign if they were able to take advantage of that. So we thought, based on the reality of what applicants come forward, it was very realistic to keep with what is desirable for a business, based on current standard size requirements.
And how does that work for a building that doesn't really have a facade like Winter Valley? It's, there's no front of Winter Valley, it's just out on the road.
It's on the road, yeah.
So
There's signs.
the way this works is they're allowed 20 square feet and it can't be higher than 8 feet.
Okay.
So there were some
Yep.
parameters put
Right.
around that as well. And that was kind of, again, that was, based on like measuring like Winter Valley and
Multifamily housing in a residential neighborhood, yeah,
Right.
that's
Right, yeah. And I think Fuller Village too.
Fuller Village, yep, that was another example.
So my question, I guess this is for Ms. Manning. I guess was Larry's summary of, here's the difference between the old and the new. I mean, because that's what I want to know to make this decision. What's the difference between the old and the new? Was Larry's summary accurate? Is there more to add?
I think it was, I thought it was excellent, actually. I looked at it today and I was like, oh, thank you very much. And I've been using AI a little bit myself, I have to admit.
So you gotta check
so-
it. You gotta
Yeah,
check
well,
it.
it's a good companion. It's a good companion. I'm learning. So, yeah, I think that, I think this was really comprehensive. I think between what Meredith set the table in terms of why, and sort of how this is really kind of, even though it's 17 pages long or something like that, which is
It's a lot shorter than it was last
a lot
month.
shorter, okay, 16, because I think page 17 are things that are gonna get moved into the design guidelines. 16 pages. This is what I'm hoping we're working towards actually with KP Law, like in terms of when we're doing zoning bylaw amendments, because this is very sort of, I'm struggling for the word I want, but clear and, concise and, kind of like a really, really thoughtful about sort of like what's already in the bylaw and how this can work well with what's already in the bylaw and tying things together nicely. I mean, we talked about like enforcement, where some of the fines are different throughout the bylaw and, just different things like that, where we're really kind of working to tighten things up. And I feel like this is a great first example of that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in here, but I'm confident. I've done a couple of these already since I've been here. I've done a couple of sign reviews with the sign review committee, so I've already sort of seen things firsthand, and I think this approach can work really well.
The sidewalk A-frame signs?
Yeah.
They no longer, in the new bylaw, will not require insurance coverage?
So that is actually on page 17, so that is going to go in the guidelines.
It will still require insurance, or?
The guidelines are sort of in companion to the bylaw. So if there's language in the guidelines that dictates something about the sidewalk signs, then that will also apply.
Sorry,
Are you-
I guess wasn't looking at
I
the,
think that might have been an AI thing. The insurance for the A-frame signs, now that you mention it.
yeah, is that
Getting from
required in the
presentation.
new? Is that required in the new bylaw, or the
It's,
post?
yes, it will be in the, it's recommended to be moved into the design guidelines. So there were a number of
Yeah.
items that were previously in the
Should be.
bylaw.
And the attorney was okay with that not being in, because that seems like it might be a bylaw thing.
So it is required.
Pardon me?
It is required in the new bylaw. That's what I'm asking.
It's being moved to the design guidelines. And the way this is structured, the design guidelines are sort of like a companion to the bylaw. So my understanding is that when somebody comes in wanting a sandwich board sign, they would have to comply with both the bylaw and the guidelines. That's my understanding, but certainly,
Yeah, I just want to be clear on that. And so when the Cub Scouts or the Milton players put up a sign, they need to carry liability insurance for their A-frame sign? As this reads, under the current and new guidelines?
Well, that's a good question. Well, first of all, I think
That falls under temporary signs. Those would fall under, so those would not. But if you had, say, Asterio Madre, who puts a sandwich board out, or Abbey Park, that would, and that will distinguish between what is, what is temporary and what is a business ongoing puts out their signs. I think part of it was a recommendation by town council that we did it this way. One of the things that we're looking at also as a town is being consistent with what our fees are. And so that's something that the new building inspector, Michael White, is, I think, looking at. Are we fairly treating different, are we charging one person one thing and charging someone else another? So I think all of the fees will be looked at some point, and maybe that was part of the reason why she didn't have it within the bylaw, so we wouldn't have to go back to town meeting to change the fee necessarily, but.
See,
So
like temporary A-frame sign.
let's just take a step back then, because I think that might have been, I think the thing about the A-frame signs requiring liability insurance, now that I'm looking at the bylaw that I use for my comparison, it's included with something about A-frame signs, and I think it's not really related. But I guess the question is really, when is liability insurance required? Is it required for any signs? So if Andrew were to put a political sign in his yard, would he require liability insurance for that? I wouldn't think so,
Because
right?
that's residential,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
if it's,
A-frame signs are the same thing. When you put an A-frame sign in the middle of an intersection for the Boy Scouts, does that require liability insurance?
that's a question, yeah, and I wasn't clear on whether that fell in a gap or whether they are technically required to carry it. And
Yeah, I mean, the
non-compliant.
current bylaw requires it,
Okay, I mean,
it's.
town sports,
Yeah,
Yeah,
town plays,
I don't know whether or not it's
school events,
enforced.
and I would argue that it's insane to ask them to carry $1 million coverage.
And you have to go through the select board on those signs, so an application is made, if it's a garden club event, a perennial sale or green sale or, whatever, Boy Scouts, that you go through a permit and it's given, but it's never been, there's never been an insurance policy that's been required.
Do they-
Is that different from this process? Maybe that's the question.
I don't know that the scouts ever go for a permit, do they? Just throw it up in front of the stand.
I don't know.
They're
Not
supposed
that I
to
want to
go.
call them out.
Somebody says, hey, can you put the signs up? And then I go and put the signs up.
You're supposed to go before the select board and the town administrator in the select board's office, and there's a form that you fill out. So if you're gonna put something around, you're allowed only a limited amount of signs, and there has been an issue with enforcement, I can tell you, because it gets, the high school, if the music program might sell mattresses, or, whatever, it's, all of a sudden, there's signs everywhere, and there is supposed to be just a limit of how many signs in certain locations that are supposed to be approved by the select board.
And also, can impede traffic. I know for Porch Fest, we did get approval from the select board for
Oh, they
Porch
do,
Fest.
okay,
But
great.
I don't know about for the Boy Scouts. But I do know
They
that one of
should,
my Porch Fest signs disappeared when I put it on the Parkway last year, which is DCR. It's a hurricane coming, and my
Oh, okay.
sign just disappeared.
That's what the
That's
DPW have been
reasonable.
pulling up some of those, because
I just want to make sure
That's
there's some practical, pragmatic, because
absolutely, and that will all be in the guideline,
I think that might be something worth hitting when we look at them,
Yeah.
making sure the liability
Yeah,
insurance
just
is clear.
double check that with
then
you.
the temporary signs, I want to make sure I heard that correctly. So you're saying that they're removed within a reasonable amount of time, but how long are they allowed to be put up?
45 days.
45 days.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, and how long do they have to take it down? After, like, the real estate example that you posed, after a sale closes, how long do they have to take it down?
Is that when the clock starts, 45 days?
Yeah, 45 days.
And so if I'm selling my home, I'm allowed to keep the sign up for 45 days.
It's till the sale, didn't you say till the sale? Until the close of the sale, and then you want it removed? If it was,
Honestly, I would think you'd probably have to renew for a second, like temporary sign permit.
So in the maximum I could have to sell my home, a sign, for example, would be 135 days.
oh, you're saying to renew? you
Yeah,
can
3
only renew
times at
certain
45
times.
days.
Yeah, that doesn't sound
Yeah.
unreasonable,
No.
yeah, or half a year.
I just wanna double check,
Well,
that's
there was
something
a
we
house
should
on
double
the
check,
It wasn't for 6 months because it was in lien.
that is not under exempt.
Houses around the market.
not require a sign permit to local government.
Even for
Double
political
check that, 'cause
campaigns,
yeah,
under-
Signs indicating a property is for sale or lease or advertising. Yeah, signs indicating a property is for sale or lease, those are exempt.
are exempt.
It's exempt.
Like political signs in a storefront window would be, maximum you're allowed to have it would be 135 days.
Political signs in a storefront window, that's a good
Campaign
question.
sign.
Oh, campaign sign, so sign non-commercial. I don't know, that's a tough one, I mean, I guess it is a non-commercial sign, it just happens to be in a commercial storefront?
It seems
And I
like
think
a,
there is language that if it's not related to the business, so it would, the sign in a storefront would have to be related to that business, as far as
That
my
happens a
understanding, and
lot
if
with your
not,
political signs in businesses, that happens all the time in East Milton.
I mean, 135 days seems like a really short period of time.
It's 4 months.
Well, we do have a problem in
Yeah.
this town in election season, I mean, you'll see it, you know, with political signs, I mean, there's so many of them.
Right, but are you putting those out more
in
than
the
4
store,
months in
like at a
advance?
storefront window, I don't know, I've seen them on property, I have seen them on.
East Milton.
Maybe some of them. Like in a storefront window, I haven't seen them.
I feel like I have in East Milton Square.
Or like,
So the existing bylaw is 45 days for temporary signs. The existing bylaw is 45 days for temporary signs.
it's, I thought I read 60 and the new was 45.
Well, I'm curious, and I see your hand is up, Lee, Michael, I'll get to you in a second. I'm curious, the new bylaw has a definition of temporary sign. But that doesn't seem to be used anywhere in the bylaw. So, what are we saying about temporary signs?
It is in the, it is.
So
Okay,
I
can you please
believe
tell me
it's in section 2753.2C, signs and billboards. There's language in there about temporary signs.
I'm sorry, say again?
So it's 275, section 3.2C2 is language on temporary signs. That's in the existing bylaw.
Oh, I'm talking about the new bylaw.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the new bylaw does have it in the definitions, yes.
And?
Yeah, and my understanding is that it tracks pretty closely.
I'm sorry, but I don't see anything about temporary signs in the bylaw after the definitions. I don't even know what the intent is.
Temporary sale signs on page 14.
I saw temporary sale signs.
Yep.
Maybe I dismissed that.
Yeah, let me just do a quick search on temporary, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's mentioned a couple of times.
So
Signs.
the language, so the language that you're seeing on page 2 of the new bylaw, proposed bylaw.
Yes.
That language that's underlined, temporary signs advertising any service, commodities, including but not limited to goods, foods and services,
Okay,
till the end. You're gonna find that in the existing bylaw, in section 2753.2C2, where it talks about temporary signs are permitted, provided that temporary sign advertising any commodities, including but not limited to goods, food and services, shall be displayed only on premises where commodities are sold. So this was part of sort of the reorging, where there was this one small section that talks about signs and billboards in the existing bylaw. So that language was carried into this definitions section.
There are some references, Jay, there's a reference on page 14, temporary sale signs.
temporary sale signs, that's the only reference I see. We were talking about like, if Milton Players wants to put up a sign saying, we're having a play, 44 days from now. I don't see anything. The temporary sale signs is the only place in the bylaw that I see reference to temporary signs. Maybe that's intentional.
Because in number 3, it says add a new section as follows, and then most of the document looks like the new section, so is there like stuff that maybe refers to your temporary that isn't in this
The latest
The
copy.
old stuff is repealed, because if you look above that, it says, it says repeal section 3.2C and 3.3D. Repeal those, so that's the old bylaws that refer to signs. Now it's adding this.
Fundamentally, here's a problem that I have, is that I understand the spirit of this. We don't want signage that is either offensive or really disgusting looking, that somehow detracts from the area. We don't want flashing LED signs that are at all night. But the ones that I have real problems with are the temporary or the window signs and the prescriptive percentage area that you're allowed to post. Like if I'm a store owner and I want to put up a Black Lives Matter or political campaign sign, I don't want the, my first gut reaction is that the 45 days is a really short amount of time. The square footage feels like a really small percentage amount of time and fringes on sort of my right to support support something, and 20% is really small, and so I don't know what the right duration or the right size is, but
This was a recommendation by the chair of the sign review committee. He said, you would be surprised because you have a regular sign on your building, and then if you cover 20%, it was not only for, he mentioned not only for aesthetics, but for safety. When you start blocking your store windows and covering them up, it becomes a safety issue, whether it's on the door, the windows. It's something that, it was a recommendation by John Zikowitz, said 20% would be really, would be big.
I disagree with it. Like a real estate office that has postings in the window, that approaches 50% of the window.
Like in Lower
Maybe
Mills
even
area?
more.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And so, yeah, you wouldn't have to take it, again, if it's there, if it exists, this does not require anyone to take down anything that is currently.
Well, the real estate office he's talking about, I'm sure they flip them out every time they sell a new house. I'm sure they
If it's, yeah, but if the existing sign, we're not, that's not required.
So a new real estate
So,
office could have less square footage to, like, I don't think that's fair either. I don't want to beat up
Yeah,
the messenger.
no, it's,
no, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
This may be the kind of thing where we might just have to let the town meeting decide.
So Lee Michael's had his hand up for a
Okay,
while. I don't know
sorry.
if you can- Yeah, Lee Michael, you're recognized. Thank you for your
Thanks,
patience.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I agree that we probably need to address the real estate issue because a realtor's office does have that kind of sign. So it probably can just be addressed by noting in here that that's allowed or something. The thing that I wanted to point out was in the design guidelines area at the end, the items that are moving into the design guidelines. Next to or underneath the A-frame sandwich signs paragraph, there is item number 1, Roman numeral 1. It says the sign shall only be displayed in front of the place of business, adjacent to the buildings only, and not along the curb. I can't figure out what that means. And I'm wondering what I am able to figure out what it means. I think, imagine how it applies to Abbey Park, which is on a corner, and there's curbs that run along every inch of outside wall space that they have. So, what does that number 1 mean?
so I think that what we were, I think the goal, and this came from previous language that I think existed, is that you would have, the sign would be to the front of the building, so it would be most visible, and not along the curb, for safety reasons. in front of, so it would identify the business. And, you know, we did talk about this, a little bit, like Osteria Madre, they put it up at the top of Adams Street because you can't see, not everybody knows there's a restaurant down there. And that would, we would consider that to be in front of the building. So it would be, so that it would be safety, not along the curb necessarily, but so it would be identifying whatever that place of business is, not, you know, not confusing to anybody who would drive by to say, where exactly is
Is that 88 Wharf? Is that?
at 88 Wharf, they have one,
Okay.
Abbey Park has one. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a problem with it, not putting it in front of a building. I think, Liz, do you want to add to
It
that?
sounded like the way you described Madre Osterias, that sign isn't really in front of their building.
We considered it to be because of that driveway access, that we would consider that to be in front.
Okay. So what does "and not along the curb" mean in this instance?
I mean, honestly, my reading it, my sense is that you don't want to impede pedestrian access.
Okay, here's my
You
sense.
don't
We shouldn't
want-
have language in the bylaw that we can't defend or explain. Like that number one, I think, needs to be relooked at. I do not understand.
So this actually won't be in, this is something that will be in the design guidelines, so we'll have some more opportunity when we revise those design guidelines to address these questions, so that's really helpful. And the way this
Who's
is,
responsible for ratifying the sign guidelines?
it is a combination between the sign review committee, I believe, and the planning board. I think the planning board is listed in there as well, yeah. So,
They don't have the force of law, the guidelines.
Right.
correct. Yep.
That's, you can see, Lee Michael, that it's not for inclusion in the zoning amendment, so that's being removed.
Yep. Okay. Well, before it gets into the design guidelines, I hope it can be clarified because I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we wanna-
absolutely.
How many signs get reviewed in a year?
A dozen, somewhere around there, dozen, maybe, yeah, about a dozen, I'd say.
Thanks.
Maybe a little bit more. As many as you think.
I'd like to ask something, following up on one of the last things Andrew said, which is, I understand why we're grandfathering in old signs, but if I want to build a gas station right next to a pre-existing gas station, they've got a big sign showing their prices. I want a big sign showing my prices. Theirs is legacy grandfathered in, and mine is not. What are, you know, I think that's fair.
That's the zoning, that's the.
I think that's too bad. That's,
Well, it's the zoning act, it's the state zoning act that allows those pre-existing non-conforming uses to continue.
so the answer is too bad?
Not necessarily too
No,
bad, I mean,
It's appealable.
Yeah.
Say again?
It's appealable, Jay.
Okay.
So they could go and ask for an exception to match their next door neighbor.
It happens.
And
It
we
does
also,
happen all the time.
we also carved out, we actually are giving and carved out and making it less restrictive for a new gas station to come in. Because we felt, you know, in the commercial areas, the signs that have gotten permission to have the LED lights, and I don't know if anybody remembers in East Milton Square, where there's 3 gas stations. Currently, one has the red LED lights on the corner of, is it Wood, not Wood,
The one by the by the funeral home there?
yes, which was hugely controversial. I don't know if you guys lived here, but it was a big, East Milton was up in arms about it because it was so close to a residential area that they were saying these lights are gonna be shining in my bedroom. And there was a big back and forth, and there was, you know, they lowered the height of it, but it was still very controversial. We recognize that in a commercial area, now, because one has these LED price signs, it would be unfair to probably say, okay, this other gas station, and already the same owner has applied on Bryant for his new sign to have these LED lights, and he's gotten approval on those. So if the third says, well, these two have it, why can't I have it? So we carved out permission for those gas stations to have LED price signs, because we realized the reality is it's been granted by, for two, it would be unfair for the third. So we've actually made it more permissible for the gas stations. And we've also allowed a higher height for the gas stations than a freestanding sign would be allowed by other businesses. So we've actually given them more lenience because for that reason, if they weren't grandfathered in and they're new, that it would be more permissible.
They would have, they have, I mean, gas stations have a number of services, you know. They're required by law, if they're an inspection station, to have the inspection sign up there. They just have the requirements for more signs anyways.
And this is one area I'm least concerned about. The whole window sign thing. I think about a liquor store that has lotto signs in it. That's gonna take up a huge percentage of the window space. And that's standardized size. And you can
That's what we're
display-
trying to avoid, because that was one of the things that, we can't tell them to take it down, but does it really look good for our business districts to have posters of beer cans and, it's a really unattractive look but no one's gonna ask them to take it down. But when we have a new, craft and crew come in, not everybody has to have that. You can have a different look, you can sell the same products, but you can have a more aesthetically pleasing and enhance our business district rather than looking at, a bunch of cardboard poster covering the whole window. So that's hopefully where we'll end up eventually, but over time.
That's just weird. You could fill your window with bottles of liquor and have one sign that's less than 20%, right?
Sure, I mean,
Because it's not a
You
sign.
can have it, right, you can have displays. So we wanted to allow for people to have displays of their whatever products that they're selling. But you can see through, you want to be able to see into the store, see into the building, again, aesthetics, but also for safety reasons.
yeah, sorry, Jay.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to derail this conversation, but I really like to focus on what's changed from the old rules to the new rules, and specifically, what's more restrictive from the old rules to the new rules. Now, you already addressed the 2 square feet per linear foot, 1 square feet per linear foot. I think you addressed that. I can put Larry's slide back up here if you want. That's really what I want to hear. What's more restrictive, and why are we making this more restrictive? I think would go a long way. Let me share this again.
So the
20%.
sign area would be one that's more restrictive, as you mentioned, the,
Duration.
The window.
The duration is less.
Duration goes from 60 to 45 days.
so it is, I believe it's 45 days in the existing bylaw.
Is it?
Yep. Temporary advertising signs shall be displayed for no more than 45 days. So that is in the existing bylaw.
Okay.
So that's not more restrictive. Let's see.
The size of the window signs,
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
20% to
it's less restrictive for freestanding signs, because originally it was the signage area calculated both faces of the signs, and that was clarified with the sign review committee, that it was just a single face of the freestanding sign, so it's less restrictive there. The sign review committee is able to waive dimensional requirements, for size and for size, setback, and I think a third area where they're able to waive it. So that's on the face is more permissive, because before it was sort of like, sort of with good cause. The pre-existing non-conforming now does require a special permit from the zoning board of appeals. So that is sort of an added piece. But in my opinion, it makes the process more clear. And there's a very clear set of criteria that need to be followed to issue that special
that's
permit.
correct. If it's changed, they need a special permit. If it's unchanged, they just keep on keeping on.
Yeah, but it's pretty narrow.
Okay.
It's pretty narrow, right? In terms of like what's allowed to just keep on keeping on. If somebody wants to, refresh their signage or change their signage, which, longtime sort of, pre-existing non-conforming businesses are probably gonna wanna do that periodically. That's a special permit. What else? So, I mean, honestly, I think it's mostly the places where things were silent, like that height, where we talked about the height in the residential district, right? But I would say on balance, it's more clear and it's more straightforward, and hopefully the outcome is that it's a benefit to the folks that are gonna be trying to pull permits.
So part of what we do here is try to anticipate how the conversation's gonna go at town meeting. And so I think, maybe we wanna have this really tightened up is, what is gonna be more restrictive? I think town meeting will care about that. What's gonna be more restrictive? Let's have a very short list. Here's what's gonna be more restrictive and here's why.
And pictures,
Pictures
I
are,
think the flip side
all
is
these signs.
what could be more permissive as well.
yeah, true, the other direction too. What's gonna now be allowed?
Was that a halo lighting versus backlit versus internally lit versus?
Reverse lit. Yeah. Examples of those types of lighting, yep.
And I would say overall,
See
it's
Michael's
the things that are in here now that didn't exist. It's not that it's more restrictive, it's just it's clarifying. So it's a lot of clarifying language that's in it, and because it didn't exist in the previous bylaw, it just was a gray area. So this is taking what the practice is of the sign review committee and giving clarity for an applicant. So it's not being more necessarily more restrictive. It's more of making our bylaw align with what is consistent with what are the practices now and codifying what our current practices are.
Also, again, thinking ahead to a town meeting discussion. You can imagine a 45-minute discussion very much on like the Cub Scouts signs.
Yeah.
I still don't know the answer to that question.
We
And they
can
have
get
them or not, I
clarity
still
on
don't know the
that.
answer.
Yeah, we'll get clarity. I just wanna.
Absolutely.
Maybe an exception,
Yes, absolutely, they can have them, or yes, absolutely, you're gonna get the answer. No, I don't know what you're saying yes to.
We'll
Who would say
clarify
that again?
language.
Are you saying yes, you'll get us the
writing
answer?
and thinking and
Okay.
I'm multitasking.
And the for sale signs, I think
So
that
get
we
an
wanna have that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just was gonna say, like, the for sale signs, we wanna give, language, and, because,
If it takes me a year to sell my house, then.
yeah, and
I want
that,
a year.
yeah, and no one goes currently for a permit for a real estate sign.
I think we've settled that though, that there's an
That was-
exemption.
that seems okay.
That was an
That's an
Question
exemption, so that
So
one's
Good to have an
pretty,
answer.
We
that
wanna
one's
make
pretty
sure
clear.
that is clear, okay.
So
And
the
real estate.
process on the A-frame signs is clearly like, that's something people wanna be sure we're super comfortable with. If there's been any changes to that, and I honestly wasn't super focused on it because it wasn't coming in front of the sign review committee,
Yeah.
which is what I have to staff. But yeah, so I'll, and I knew a lot of it was moving into the guidelines, so,
It goes right through the building department.
yeah, so we'll,
The liability insurance too, that
Yeah.
would be a question.
yep, absolutely, yep.
Is liability insurance required? And then the
Certainly.
20% thing, I mean, that's gonna be a huge debate at town meeting. I'm not sure what to do about that. It's,
20% of the,
20% of the window.
I mean, it's pretty,
I don't-
in the current bylaw, I wasn't even aware of it. I still don't like it, by the way, but.
Yeah, but some people don't like the neon lights either. Some people think we should allow neon lights, but, we don't.
I can't predict what town meeting will debate. I wouldn't have expected the window 10%, 20% to be a topic, but
Yeah.
I should just say that and then I'll regret it.
I know, and then 3 nights later at town meeting.
And it doesn't include holiday, obviously, a lot of storefronts do some holiday, which looked really great. Abbey Park did it, the gift store, on Central Avenue, there's some different sort of creative things with the holiday windows, which would take up more, but those are exempt, so.
Has that been abused? Because that could be a loophole of someone, now it's St. Patrick's Day, and after that it's Easter, and after that it's Labor Day, and after that it's Arbor Day. If someone wanted to abuse
That's
that,
why we
they
actually
could.
changed the language to be seasonal rather than holiday, so Seasonal, it's all exempt.
I'm gonna celebrate fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
Celebrate
great.
summer.
Yeah, it's not been abused and it's,
Summer.
It
Winter
still seems like
sale.
someone
Exact.
could use that if they
Winter
want to.
sale.
We could clarify it, but it would be like a 35-page, we'd have to list all the holidays that are allowed.
right now it's exempt, yeah.
If it hasn't been a problem up until now, then.
Excellent.
So, I don't mean to end the discussion, I don't want to end the discussion, but where do we stand as far as open questions? Ms. Manning, were you writing down questions that we had for you? Where does this committee stand for questions that we need answered before we make a recommendation?
So we want to get the answers to these questions before we make a recommendation, right? Set on the agenda that we could vote on this tonight, but
Yeah, I said on the agenda we could vote on this tonight. One thing I'm thinking is we didn't get the final language till like 5 PM.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell people they can't make a motion and second it and vote on it.
I think we could wait until we get answers to these questions, right?
But do we know what questions we have? I don't even know.
Oh, well, I mean, what I have written down here is liability insurance. For sale signs or temporary signs.
Some of the A-frames.
Yeah, the A-frames, the questions about the A-frames and
Political signs and businesses.
Yeah,
political signs and
political signs and
businesses.
businesses, yeah.
Yeah, 20%.
Is it also, it's not just the A-frames, right? Is it just any of the promotional signs you see stuck around for different things? It could be for sports league sign up or, they're
Yeah, that's
not
what we're
necessarily
talking about.
A-frames, that there are temporary signs.
Yeah.
Those are required to be permitted or,
Those go through the select board.
do they though?
They do, they should.
Why wouldn't they
They
go
should.
through this?
Yeah.
They're supposed to go through
Why
the
wouldn't they
select
go
board.
through this? Why would this not apply?
That's just us.
For the temporary signs?
For the temporary sign,
Are we still talking about, are we talking about temporary
Yeah,
signs?
yeah, we are.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think there's
Okay.
temporary signs.
So then why wouldn't, again, temporary sign doesn't, I don't really see how this bylaw applies to temporary signs or doesn't.
So the section on page 2, which defines temporary sign, I think kind of provides most of the language around authorized by the select board, an activity involving public health, safety, welfare, election referendum. So is the question that it's not defined what the process is to go to the select board? Because I believe that is contained in the design guidelines.
I would think,
So,
I would think it
right,
would
so
be-
I mean, is that sort of the question, because it's anticipated that these signs go to the select board, but,
I don't see where that is in here.
so it talks about, signs, special event, this is on page 2 under, you know what, I think, I totally, I hear you loud and clear on the temporary signs, it needs to be tightened up.
Yeah,
It needs to be tightened up. And it's not, that, we chatted a little bit about this with the strikeout and the underline. You know, the way the article is written, it talks about that, certain languages to be deleted, certain languages to be inserted. And then anything that doesn't fall into those two categories is already in the bylaw, in the definition section of the bylaw, right? So that's confusing. So we could probably talk to Carolyn a little bit about that.
I think that's
Um,
fine, in my
that-
opinion. I think the first two.
Oh, that part's fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so I feel like the existing language on temporary signs in the existing bylaw and this language in this new proposed bylaw, I feel like there's some confusion about sort of how those two things tie together. And I think we can do a better job of defining that and talking about the process for obtaining a temporary sign permit.
yeah.
Fair?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, good.
Already, the other one was real estate.
Yeah,
Real estate.
I was going to ask that. Did we ever get any answer to Andrew's question about real estate agencies being able to cover most of their windows with those signs? Are they considered displays? Are they considered signs? And why would real estate agencies be exempt if, an ice cream store wants to just show all its different kinds of ice cream in a window?
Yeah,
And that goes back to the whole thing of why I'm not comfortable with the 20% to begin with. Like, there are some cases that are real estate offices, tasteful, can't see through them. I don't think it's a safety issue. liquor store with all kinds of advertisement. It's aesthetically non-pleasing, but it's a completely different
Well,
thing than something else. And so then the question becomes like, how do you balance all of that?
that's a hard one, because I don't think any amount of clarifying will.
No, exactly.
I mean, we can do an exception for real estate offices, but beyond that, it's just, what, it kind of comes down to,
Product that they're
what do you
selling,
want
yeah.
to sign bylaw, whether you want to sign bylaw to make your town look a little bit better or not. Whether you consider that a violation of free speech.
And for me, that issue is, the current law says you can only have up to 20%. Now, it doesn't sound like your objection is going from 20 to 10. It sounds like your objection is sort of having anything there. But the current, maybe your objection is going from 20 to 10, but.
No, it's that 20 to begin with seems very restrictive, just at its gut, and I don't know how to create a bylaw that fairly makes creation, other than having a style police look at every proposal and say this is okay or it's not.
And
That's
maybe you don't like this. Maybe you don't like this response. My response would be, we currently have a bylaw that limits it to 20%.
Yep.
So we're not radically changing that. Now, if we wanted to say we should get rid of that 20% rule, that would sort of be going a different direction than.
That's right.
And why we allow real estate offices under the current framework?
We haven't. There's a lot of signs that, or things that people have put up without any permission, because they didn't know that there was a process in town. So they just put them up. And the problem is, once one does it, then another one wants to do it. But it's, it's been an enforcement issue. We've had some change of, it used to be more enforced, I will say, in the past. It's, we just had some turnover in our building department, so.
That leads to something that we haven't talked about, which is fines. $50, $100, and then $300 a day. How does that compare to the current bylaw? How does that compare to, I guess it's sort of apples and oranges to other zoning problems? Because if my garage is too close to my neighbor, I can't snap my fingers and fix it. But if my sign is too big, tell me to take it down, I can take it down. I just know in this committee, not only this year, but in previous years, we've raised the pitchforks and torches when the fines seem too high, so.
So there was input put into this also from the building department. So I don't know if that, and that's also why it's not gonna be it's not in the bylaw, it's gonna be
The fines is part of the
So
bylaw.
this is,
the fine,
yeah.
but it's, but I think there's also gonna be guidelines, because we wanted to make sure that it's consistent and that we do get input from our building commissioner. So I believe that's what we currently had,
I'll
in
double
zoning,
check.
but we can double check.
Yeah, I'll double check that with, I'll double check it myself anyway.
Yeah, if we
to
can
make sure.
point to
We talked-
either.
It was definitely part of the conversation was making it, consistent. Looking for places to be consistent within the zoning bylaw itself. $50 for a first violation, I gotta be honest with you, seems pretty low.
Oh, it's the
To
per
me.
day.
So fines shall be cumulative, and each day on which a violation occurs shall constitute a separate offense. So I guess you'd have to send somebody out to enforce it? You know what I mean?
Special services.
Yeah, so we'll figure that one out too.
Yeah, if you can
We'll
point
get
to
an
something
answer
in
to that
our current
too.
bylaws that we can compare it to.
I don't think, I'm not sure what's in the current bylaw, but I do know that it doesn't seem like it's ever been enforced. We've made recommendations for signs, or asked people to take down signs, and it's just never happened. I mean, I can think of like 3 or 4 different examples. Of, signs that they said, okay, and they just went on their merry way and the sign stayed.
Yeah, I don't.
So we can get clarity for that.
If I put up a poster of beer in my liquor store and you tell me to take it down, I can take it down, or I'm fined $300 a day. But if I build a 13-foot sign and you say it shouldn't be higher than 12 feet, it might take me more than a few days to fix that.
Then you enter an appeal.
Okay, I just don't know if the $300 could add up, but I'll throw that out to the committee. Is that a concern we have, or?
Yeah, I'm very interested in looking at the fines.
Absolutely.
My comment would be that it is, I don't want to send this back for review. I'd like to ideally get this done this town meeting, but then I really hate taking up this much time of everybody's time here. But to me, it doesn't feel 100% baked or 90% baked.
You're talking about the window sign specifically, or you're talking about sort of big picture?
Big picture, like, I think there's a lot of things that may not have been, a lot of exception cases that haven't been sort of figured out yet. And these are just a handful we're throwing up, and I'm sure there's others, and I just want to make sure that people aren't inadvertently out of violation of them. Or we have to make all these holes in making exception cases for everything. I don't know.
Well, you heard Larry's list of issues that he's taking back.
Yep.
Do you think that was a complete list, or do you think?
I hope so, but
You're saying we may not be thinking of everything?
yeah, I mean, like, those are ones that just came up we came up with in the last 45 minutes. And are there others that?
Yeah, once 300 town meeting members, you might come up with quite a few more.
And we also will have public hearings on this. So we wanted to get it to you first, but there'll be public hearings on this, and, we'll be listening to anything that we feel like we want to be prepared for town meeting to address.
The devil's advocate, like, I have never attended
That's what I was about to say. I've seen your public hearings, 3 or 4 or 5 people might show up. We're gonna have 250 people in the room at town meeting. And, what about if my Girl Scout wants to sell cookies? And, yeah, what I don't want, and I don't know how we avoid this, is 250 town meeting members thinking, what about this case? What about this case?
Yeah. It's hard to avoid. Because, the bottom line is that some towns don't have a sign review bylaw, and they just allow any signs. Many towns. I don't know if you guys have ever driven through Canton. I don't think they have a sign bylaw. Some towns don't
Wow,
believe
that's
in
some shade there.
them.
Canton.
Canton has
Am I
many
right?
good things, but their signs are not one of them. Yeah, it's, so, some towns just don't believe in a sign bylaw. Some towns probably never did it because it always seemed like a violation of free speech or too restrictive, So at some point, we just have to take a step back and decide if we want to be a town like that, or if we want to have a town that has some control over its signage, That's kind of up to people to decide.
what do I care about? I don't want things that are gaudy or offensive to people to be allowed to be put up in spaces.
Yeah.
Like, sign that says, I hate Korean people, loud, like, I don't think that is appropriate, but.
You know what? I bet you could do it. First Amendment.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Maybe a little off topic.
But
Yeah.
my point is, like, that's what I care about in a town. Do I want it to be like Christmas town aesthetic?
And that's why we're here, and we have a bylaw right now, which has been problematic, and we're trying to fix the problems. I think these things, your list, are very good questions, and I think things that our town council can put language to. And that's where we have a fabulous town council, and I can trust to put to tighten some of that language so there's clarity on those. But this is a problematic, our current bylaw is problematic, and it's come a long way. It used to be, years ago, Milton did not allow any political signs at all. Some people who've lived here didn't allow any, it was just very restrictive. Real estate signs, political signs, nothing was allowed. And so we're allowing these things, but trying to keep, an aesthetic look to protect the historic character of the town. There's
I do want to respect your time. You've been
Yep.
here for an hour,
So-
and I appreciate that.
So we can answer some of these questions. I think Liz can check with town council, get, some answers to Larry, and then hopefully you can take it up at your next meeting and resolve some of these questions, so.
Just gonna write down lemonade stands too. Someone at town meeting will ask about lemonade.
Yeah.
That's a real thing,
Girl Scouts
actually,
for
yeah, you're
Girls.
right.
Didn't want to throw that out there, but that,
Yeah.
yeah, that's we're gonna turn a blind eye to it,
Drugs.
but
Yep.
do we have to call that out, and does that mean like?
Yeah,
But I
we wanna
might
make sure
say,
those are
I
exempt.
might say it here, and I also might say it, I probably will say it in front of town meeting. We're not building a sign bylaw from nothing. We're taking a current sign bylaw and changing it. Is the change better, or is the change worse? Or is the change so ambiguous that we need to wait for 6 months? And hopefully the answer is the first one, but.
The assumption is that the first one was good to begin.
No, the first one is the current law.
Yeah,
I mean-
the question we're asking
wouldn't be the
is, are
assumption.
you
Why would-
okay with the changes, not, necessarily what's it right to have, do we agree with these?
Right. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
Two very different questions.
Okay. Have we gotten all of our questions out? Committee?
Skywriting? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Airspace.
All right. I want to thank both of you for your time.
Yes.
Sure.
You know how to
Thank
contact
you.
Larry, you know
Yes,
how to
I think we have our
contact me.
list. We should,
Tattoos.
our town council is very responsive and can, hopefully get this.
So we've got a meeting 2 days from now. Obviously, that's too soon. We've got a meeting next Tuesday. I think we'll be focused on the schools, then we've got a meeting the following Monday. So that'll be 2 weeks from today.
Yep.
We could have something not only updated, but go back and forth with me and Mary, or 2 weeks from today?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, great.
Okay, great.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you so much. Yeah.
So Chief Madden wandered off.
Yeah. Probably just next door, I imagine.
He might be next door, he might be just outside.
But we have a lot of other stuff in the agenda.
We do have other things we can talk about. I wanted to respect his time and go next. Whoa. Okay. Someone wanna?
Yeah, sorry, beating that dead horse.
Oh, that's all right, man. I mean, that's the debate we're gonna have at town meeting, unfortunately, the whole 20% thing. You know,
I
people,
think you raised it for an appropriate amount of time, but then at a certain point.
that's good, that was a very good topic, this is definitely gonna come up.
It's the intent.
I think it's a big,
Wish I could have been there
taking
when
this to
this,
that
when
town.
the sign bylaw was first passed.
Yeah, see,
Feel better, can't make it last.
our next guest is Chief Madden. Our agenda included all other topics, and Chief Madden heard we had questions about the Atherton Street Fire Station, so Chief Madden, do you have things you'd like to say starting off?
No, I'd just like to thank you for having me. I know there were a lot of questions and it was a lot to take, try and answer every one of them. So I did send out I don't know if everyone got it, just a kind of schematic of where all the apparatus will be. I don't know if everyone got it. I sent it out today, this morning, maybe.
I will
But I-
forward it to everyone right now.
I can send it around if anybody, just a kind of a rough schematic of where everything would be.
Do you have all this equipment now?
So actually, we have 2 engines and a ladder coming in due by the end of the year. We have an engine that will be picking up at the end of probably April. The new tower truck will be here sometime around September, October. And the new engine, another engine will be here before the end of the year.
Okay.
Everything else we have. So, yeah, I'd love to, right now, some great conversations with Mr. Johnson. Right now, the Fire Station Building Committee has done an amazing job for 10 years to try and get where we are. And they've asked every question imaginable with the fire service. And I know not everybody knows much about the fire service. We're kind of an anomaly, everyone, has questions. So I'm here to answer any question that you would have. And I hope I can do it with clarity.
Just have a quick question. Do you guys use that chemical building, the chemical #1 building? over there?
The chemical building next door is actually used by the auxiliary fire department.
Oh,
Volunteers that kind of help out with like road races. They have lighting plant, they have generators. During the blizzard, they have an F-150 with 4-wheel drive. They would give nurses ride to Milton Hospital from their homes or the MBTA, so they kind of help out, some fire scenes, some police scenes.
Okay.
They give, hydration, kind of support us in that way. So,
Okay.
and it's just a bunch of volunteers that do that. So.
All right.
Maybe I'll try to think, I'm thinking about, there was a series of questions that last week.
Right.
I'll try to like triangulate it, because I think it like evolved. But one of the thoughts was like a lot of, calls you go on are non-fire, but they're
Right.
like emergency medical. And is there a way that, and I know you always send an engine.
Yep.
But is there a way that if you go and just like not a car, because you need the equipment for a car, but if it's just a house and it's an emergency, which is primarily what the things are, can you send an ambulance? And instead a smaller vehicle, and I think Jay mentioned an SUV or something?
Yep.
Or either it'd have space in there and it would save on the engine wear and tear. And probably be more efficient.
Yeah, so you look at that. So the fire department has changed in the years, right? So it used to be the fire department used to fire only fires, and that's what we did. We've evolved to an all hazard response. So everything under the sun, and the way I look at it is that if someone calls 911 because they're having their absolute worst day, no matter what the situation is, the call takers at the PD answer the phone and say, "Is this a police emergency? What's your emergency?" And if it's a police emergency, then they dispatch their units. If it's anything else under their sun, then we usually get called. So obviously fires, hazardous materials. We do water ice rescue. We do technical rescue, which would be, if something's crushed or we need to lift something heavy, we have all that equipment. We do animal rescues. We do, you name it. Like if someone has a funny smell in their house, we get dispatched. We do carbon monoxide. We do gas leaks, gasoline, natural gas, propane. We do oil. We do, everything that you can imagine, from the medicals, from heart attacks to I'm not feeling well, to falling down the stairs, to car accidents, to actually we do house lockouts. If people lock their themselves out of the house, we can actually get into somebody's house. Car lockouts, if somebody locks their keys in their car, we do that as a service. So we do so much that a lot of people don't realize what we do. And when you look at like the fire trucks have so much equipment on it, and that if we took something smaller that didn't have all of our equipment, and then we get called out to something that we don't have, that only delays time. So we look at the national standards. The national standards tell us how long we should get there, right? So we should be everywhere under 4 minutes, right? That's the standard that we're looking for. The national standards, so the NFPA, which is based out of Quincy, which has all the standards for everything under the sun that's fire related. From dispatch times to the equipment that we carry. They term, so we have class 1 engines here. So the fire engines that we have is class 1s. It carries more than 500 gallons. Our engines carry 750 gallons. We have about 2,000 feet of hose, which is about 1,000 feet of feeder hose from the hydrant to the pump. And then we have the tack lines, 1,000 feet of attack lines. You look at some of these, we may not be within 50 feet or 100 feet of somebody's home, and we still have to get through the house, and then we have to get upstairs or downstairs, second floor, third floor. We have to have that hose to be able to do that. We have to have so we call IDLH, immediately dangerous to life hazard, right? So we have our SCBAs. Our SCBAs are basically what allows us to go into a fire or hazardous area so we can actually breathe safely. We have all of our turnout gear, all of our equipment, helmets, everything we have is kept on those trucks. We have, the water rescue suits, the ice rescue suits, when we get those calls, we get the ice rescue, we get the drownings, we get all of that. And so if we decide not to take the big truck and take a smaller truck, and then all of a sudden that call comes in for something, now it delays us, and it just, we'll never get where we need to go in 4 minutes or 5 minutes or 8 minutes or 10 minutes, because we have to go back the 4 or 5 minutes, get back to the firehouse to take the appropriate piece, then to respond someplace. So that's why we everywhere we go, we take the engine, because it has everything that we need to do our job. And that's probably the most important thing, is that, I'm a Coast Guard guy. Semper Paratus was our motto, and always ready, right? So you always have to be ready. The firefighters that are in the firehouses are always ready. If they go out on a call, they have to be ready to answer that next call. There's a lot of times that we go out and we don't come back for 2-3 hours, just because it's incident to incident to incident to incident. So we always have to have that equipment with us. So, you know, you look at that, and it's not the first time that people have come up with that and said, can we do this, can we do that? But it's basically what we do. It's nothing that I do personally. It's the equipment that we carry and the training that we have that allows us to do our job. So that's the important part, is the equipment. Make sure we have everything there and ready to go. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of calls you guys have. I mean, I'm always blown away by it.
We did over 4,000 incidents
Yeah.
last year.
Right. But what am I don't know the answer, so, but I understand, so it's really a manpower thing. Because you can't have, you gotta have the people on an engine. You have to have people ready for an engine. And you probably don't have extra people at night.
We don't.
Right. One of my other questions was, I remember this from last year, but you weren't, last year I know you had some open spaces. Do you still have open spaces? Or
So we try and fill it. It's about it's about a 6 month. So I actually just put in 3 applications. We're hiring 3 more.
Yeah.
I just put them in today for the Mass Fire Academy, and they are eligible for, they got the first available class, which is August 3rd. So there's a substantial wait for that.
If you had those extra people, would you be able to? have
No,
extra people?
no, I don't think that we would be able to. You know, you look at staffing, and staffing, the NFPA creates, you know, has all these standards for staffing as well. And you look at, you know, the Fall River Fire, right? And what was the biggest cry there was the staffing. They only have 3 firefighters per piece, and they have 3 per ladder. We have 3 firefighters per engine. We have 1 person on the ladder. So we're substantially understaffed. So, you know, you look at the city of Boston, even the city of Boston has 4 firefighters per engine and 4 firefighters per ladder. And then they have 4 firefighters per heavy rescue, which has all that super technical rescue stuff, equipment. So even those cities and towns like Quincy, Boston, New York City, you would think that they would have all that people, and they don't. They still drive around in the engines because it's all their equipment that they need to have with them at all times.
I realize it started with a point I raised. I do want to try to focus as much as possible on questions about the Atherton Street Station. Which, and maybe you were and I wasn't following, but.
Well, so I'll relate it, because we started to ask, well, whatever, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
I got my questions. Thank
Okay.
you.
I hope I answered them.
Yeah, appreciate it. I think that's with the just.
That was a really tight answer. That was great for that question. My question is, the Atherton Station seems to be as big as the Central Station. And why is that? It just seems, I'm just curious about why. It seems, you know, especially relative to the East Milton Station. It's twice as big as East Milton Station, and that surprises me.
Yes, so when you look at the Atherton Street Firehouse right now, right, it's a building that was built in 1901, right? It's 125 years old. The apparatus bays that are there, 10 feet by 10 feet. And the fire engines, you know, with the roll-up door that comes up, if it
Yeah,
lowers.
sorry, it's not the size, it's not that the Atherton Station doesn't need to be renovated. I totally get that, but
Yes.
why have 5 bays
Yes.
instead of 2? Like, I think the East Milton Station, the new one's gonna have 2.
Yep.
Why have it be twice as big, 2.5 times bigger?
Right, so the 2 bays that are there, actually, what I was looking for was 2 to 3 bays. 3 bays is optimal that I think for the future. 3 modern bays that can actually fit and hold modern fire trucks or fire apparatus. The bays that are there, like I was, you know, the height is 9 feet 8 inches. The height of our engines is 9 feet 5 inches. The width of the door is 10 feet. The width of our engine is 9 feet 6 inches. So we have 3 inches on each side, and we only have 3 inches on top. When Stoughton Fire came to cover during the funeral for firefighter Thomas, they had to take equipment off the top of their truck to fit in. We struggle, you know, if you get, especially during these snowstorms, if you get a little bit of a snow up there, you have to make sure that that's shoveled out, because 2-3 inches of snow that's compacted kind of does that for us, right? And then, you know, so those 2 existing bays, when we rehab the existing building, there's not a lot of structural work is going to be done to that building. It's going to be almost like cosmetic, the interior and the exterior, and make sure everything is upgraded and everything else. But that building will stay this. We can't touch the structural of it, because then that sends the cost through the roof. So it's going to be more cosmetic to upgrade that building. The real cost is the addition around the outside, around the back, and then as you're looking at it to the right side, the 1 modern apparatus bay that will be added to it. than the other parts of the firehouse that are actually important, which is the decontamination, the wellness center. Those spaces will be added on. So when you look at it, if it's just the building, you know, option one, it would only be one apparatus bay for the future.
Even if they just substantially renovated it to make it 2 bays?
So
I know you guys have looked at it extensively, so I apologize for sort
no,
of
no,
backseat
no
driving.
worries.
But it feels like that if you substantially renovated the existing building to get the 2 bays that you need in the right size, that wouldn't cost more than the plan for the 5 bays, you know, the 2 that you have plus the 3 more. And so that's what I'm trying to understand, I guess.
I think it is. I think option four might be, and I off the top of my head, I'm
Yeah, I
not sure.
haven't seen all but the one that's.
Substantial rehabilitation of that building to make it structurally sound and deal with it, and to raise those bays, to, you know, or lower the floor, is going to be a lot of money, a lot more money than it would be with just then adding something the way that we're looking at it now.
Thank you.
Completely raising the building an option and starting from scratch?
It was. It was. You know, there's a lot of people that, you know, love the exterior and love how it looks and you know, love the history of it, the 1901, you know what I mean? It's been around for a long time, the stone foundation, and you know, a lot of people love the charm and want to keep that. You know, and the fire station building committee did a lot of that conversation back and forth. What should we do? And, you know, should you take the whole building down? Should we leave it? Should we do this? Should we add on? So, and that's where, you know, it's been a long time. It's been several years. And actually, when you look at it, the very first, the fire station space needs committee, which I think was like 2014, 2015, they actually came up with this plan and said, rehab this building and put an outbuilding out back. You know, so it still keeps its charm. You finish rehab this building and it looks great, but then you still have that space for any kind of, you know, changes in the way that the fire service does. You know, I mean, I would say that in the 20 years, 25 years that I've been on the fire department, our mission has changed tremendously. You know, back when I came on, we were doing 2,000, 3,000 runs a year. Now we're over 4,000. So the mission change has really, really changed for us. So you never know where we're going. And you know, and that's, I know, you know, just, I think one of the things that we look at, and I looked at, you know, someone challenged me and said, when you become fire chief, what is your first thing you want to do? And I said, I want to reevaluate everything that we do here in the fire service, in the town of Milton. And I believe we've done that, you know. So when you look at those smaller bays, they had the brush truck and the boat and everything else. That was kept up at engine 4 because there was no space here in this building. They couldn't use the fire, there was no space for it. We were hampered by our space that we had. We could not operate the way that the fire department should be operating because of the space that we had. And now we do have some space, and that's why the brush truck, you know, that we go out, you know, the brush truck, we can be down in the Ponset River, we can be down off of, you know, Andrews Park, we've had some brush fires back there. We can be up off of Chickatabbit Road, right off of 28, we're always up there. You know, everyone always assumed that the brush fires would be up off the Blue Hill Ave side, but it's not. It's actually, it's all over town. And the same with the boat. The boat, you know, everyone said, oh, it should always be up by Houghton's Pond because that's where the drownings are, and that's just not true. We've had plenty of other people or accidents along the Neponset River where we needed the boat. So that equipment should be centrally located here, so it best serves the town. When it's stuck up there just because that's all the space that we had, it really doesn't do anybody justice. Yeah, we have that, but it doesn't mean that it's really doing any good because it's just a giant delay of getting there, getting to where it needs to go. So when we looked at that, that's where all that, you know, back then. But since we've had this and we've opened this space next door, I think we're operating way more efficiently and you know, in line with today's fire service. You know, the training that we do and the equipment that we're keeping and the just the day-to-day operations of the fire department are operating way better because of that. And you know, so I hope I answered your question. I don't know if I did or not, but you know, looking at that, I don't know where the fire service is going, and I think if we don't have space for modern fire trucks, one of the things that I struggle with is you know, we don't have, and I've talked about a brush tender, or tender or a tanker, which carries 1,000 gallons or 2,000 gallons, whatever we can get. That has been a challenge for us, for years, is trying to get fast water on the fire. The big fire that we had up off of Big Blue by the state police barracks. When our engine showed up there, our brush truck showed up there. Well, the engine showed up there first because that's closer to Engine 4's territory, Engine 4 Atherton Street. They got around the backside and they had to walk in because you can't take that fire truck off road. So they called and the brush truck started from here. They got there and it was about a quarter acre to a half an acre. And they ran out of water trying to put that fire out. So they had to go back out and get more water and come back in. And within probably 2 hours, it exploded up to 30 acres. And just, if we had that 1,000-gallon tanker to get off road and actually get into the fire and try and put that down, it would have been a totally different fire. And we have to rely on our mutual aid partners. Like, we were calling tankers from, Canton has one, Foxborough has one, Norfolk has one, Dover has one, Raynham has one. So we were really stretched thin. We had people from all over, talking half hour, 45 minutes, hours to get up here, to fight those fires. And we have, it's the Blue Hills, 7,000 acres. There's a lot of homes that are up against those. And we were fortunate that we were able to, the firefighters did a great job. All the work that they just did at that horse barn up on Unquity Road. We were fortunate. The firefighters did an amazing job standing there and taking that wind-blown fire towards them. And they held that line, and so it didn't get at that horse barn or the state police barracks. So it's just a challenge, and that's something that, for me, when I look at the needs, something like that, or significant off-road capabilities, is something that we need as a department. This isn't going away, right? Climate change is not going away, and it's a very, very challenging thing to do. Hot, windy days, it's just going to be a challenge for us.
Previously, but I found it now and I just emailed to the whole committee, which is the options that the Fire Station Building Committee were looking at. So I emailed this to everyone.
So
Yep.
Is that the current?
So this is, headquarters is current, Engine 2 will be open by the end of the year. And then this is that 5-bay, or actually it's a 3-bay with 2, yes, the ancillary space.
Yeah, I think we want to work on that, maybe, work with Larry, work with me, something to show like maybe before and after. Here's where everything would be right now. Here's where everything will be once we have Atherton built out. I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Again, I
Totally
looked
fine.
at it. I watched a little bit of your video and, tried to just, and also I had a graduation on Friday. The recruits, we had 4 graduates, so that took up my day on Friday, and then trying to get some stuff together for you,
So this is the options. I realize it's small, but I think,
Option 3.
key might be option 3, and the green column is what is being recommended now, which is the current design as drawn, which I imagine that means
the plans that you
Atherton
saw.
Station plus 1 additional onto it, plus 2 additional apparatus bays. So maybe like column blue on the left would be the bare minimum, just adding on 1. And column 3, green, is what's being recommended, which is doing that plus adding 2 on the back. I'll scroll down to the price. That's an important thing. Estimated price. We don't have a final price at this point. The bare minimum, or not even bare, you could argue if it's bare minimum, but the smallest one would be 14.3 million. The one we're looking at would be about 16.1 million. So Mr. Walsh said they're all about the same price. I mean, that's a matter of opinion. Of 14 million and 16 million are about the same price, but there's certainly more expensive options here and less expensive options here. So to me, what that says is, if just doing the building with the additional bay is 14.3 million, and then adding the 2 things on the back is 16.1 million, the building on the back, which I'm thinking of as 4 walls and a roof, that's almost $2 million. So that's good to know. And I guess, you and I were talking before the meeting, the whole point of the next 6 months or next year is that we'll really hammer down. If we think we were looking at a 5-bay design, what would that thing in back be? Will it be corrugated metal, 4 walls and a roof? Will it be a little bit nicer? Will it be, that'll answer it. Does it cost $2 million? Does it cost more? Does it cost less?
And then, so this there's 5 bays total, and then there's also room to add more if you need to, like
Well,
temporary
I think,
bays.
yeah, I think if we do the plan that we came up with, and that last fire station building committee meeting, when we kind of narrowed down this one, we had a lot of, people from the town. We had the planning board members, we had the historic commission members, we had a couple of select board members that took part in that meeting, and all gave their 2 cents, and the idea was to come up with this, and, you know, I think for me, operationally speaking, what makes most sense operationally for the fire department? That's the way I'm going. What will enhance the fire department operations? If, you know, I think that, you know, option one, from my own personal opinion, it doesn't really, I think that sets us backwards as a department. Yes, it'll give us the new existing bay, the new bay with the 2 existing bays, but there's not much we can do with it, with those bays, you know, with modern fire apparatus. And that's the challenge, because if this building's gonna stand for the next 75 to 100 years, then we've kind of done that. And I think, and I said this at the capital planning meeting, is, you know, I think we're learning from the schools, where the schools kind of built what they needed at that moment, and now we're going through a huge, you know, Cunningham, they're doing extensive renovations there. And then, you know, you're looking at a whole new school, because we never built out for the future, and that's what I'm looking for, is for me to do my job, I have to sit there and say, okay, this is where we are now, this is how we should be operating, and where do we see ourselves? Where do we see the fire service in 5, 10, 15, 50 years? You know, that's what I'm looking for, and that's why I think we have this one shot, because we waited 125 years to build this firehouse, we waited 146 for this firehouse, and, you know, 75 for the East Milton Firehouse, so it's not something that's gonna go away. And, you know, like I said, you know, before we moved into the firehouse next year, the fire department operations were really hampered by the space that we had. So that's just, I think it's, I owe it to the town, I owe it to the fire service, and I owe it to the residents that, you know, I don't know where the fire service is going, nobody can say that, but I think if we just did the bare bones, then I don't think we're doing that entire side of the town any kind of service. You know, and, you know, you look at the history, right? That building was opened in 1901 for a need. I know Mr. Walsh talked about that. And then, you know, in the 80s, we closed it down, and we saw that need again, right? The 80s and 90s, that they had to open it. Now it's, I know Mr. Johnson has looked at the numbers, but it's significantly busy. There's a large life safety problem up there, right? With Fuller Village, and 1200 Brush Hill Road, and Curry College, and all along Blue Hill Ave and Brush Hill Road. There's substantial life safety up there that I really do think that we need to make sure we take care of that side of town.
Chief, could you help me wrap my head around something? Obviously, everybody loves firefighters. Nobody can say anything bad about them.
Well,
Highly trained resource, right? And in grand scheme of things, an expensive resource. So if I were looking at the fire department as like a business, for example, I would think it'd be crazy to send a highly trained firefighter to open someone's door, right? And so we would look at things, how do you cost optimize it? Do you have lower trained resources that you could apply to certain events and reserve the firefighters for like serious?
I would like to mostly focus on the Atherton.
No,
but go on.
and this goes to Atherton, same about equipment, right? So space is valuable, and so the question is, what really needs to be there versus somewhere else? Like brush truck, can it sit in an auxiliary garage in the Blue Hills or whatever? Is that even possible? And so what I'm trying to figure out is why do you need a brain surgeon to send to like everything? And same for equipment. Why does it all need to be in a tightly confined, expensive locale?
I mean, I'll say to you, you know, if you call 911 and you want us to say that we're going to send less people because we don't think it's that much of an emergency, and you know, most people when they call 911 don't actually give all the information that they're there. And I'll, you know, one of my favorite stories is we had a reporter from the Milton Times come and sat with us for a couple of days, back when I was a brand new lieutenant, and we did so much training with her and showed her everything we did, and we got 0 runs in So it was just one of those days, right? So then she said she needed to leave for an hour or so, right? And during that hour, we had a medical, and then we went to a house lockout. And so when she came back and she's like, "Oh, I didn't miss anything," and I said, "Well, actually, I'll challenge that." I said, "That house lockout was someone that actually just got home from shopping, and they brought their 6-week-old baby, put the baby on the floor in the kitchen, and the door locked behind her while she was trying to get her groceries in."
Oh, my God.
So that house lockout was the worst moment of her life.
Yep.
Right? So then when we show up, when you have professionals that can get up, it took us less than a minute to get inside that house. We didn't break the front door. I'm not gonna tell you how we get in. We have our secrets. We have our secrets that we do, and we were able to get into that house in less than 2 minutes it was the greatest day of her life, the greatest moment. It went from absolutely terrifying. So when I sit there and say, one of the things, car lockouts, I see it as practice. Even if there's not an emergency, we don't go there lights and sirens, but it's practice. Our members get to practice their trade. When it does come to a child or a car or an animal locked in a car door in a car on a hot summer day and they're struggling medically, then we're very good at getting that into that thing where we practice what we preach, and we're always training.
I sort of wanted to stay focused on the
Yep.
topic. I think
No, and
this is
so,
getting to.
so the pathogen and, what do we need there, and how do we optimize the use of space, and like,
I might phrase your question a different
Mhm.
way, but I think we're getting at the same idea, which is there'll be 5 bays at Atherton, if you count the 2 small ones as bays. One of them will have the truck that goes to emergencies,
Yes.
and the rest will be, and there's a spare, and the rest will be like storage. Could that storage be somewhere else? Could it be in the DPW yard? Could it be anywhere else?
So one of the things and I would say, like it doesn't really do well, right? So when the firefighters get on duty in the morning, they check out all their equipment to make sure that it's ready to go. Even though the guys the day before checked it out, you check it out because one, it's your life and you need to make sure everything works. So everything under our power, we like to keep it, in-house. So we're always maintaining it. We're always making sure that everything is in operational readiness. We have to make sure that, because if we don't have an equipment, or if there's something missing or something like that, when we go out that door, if that first engine doesn't work, then we go out the door and we're missing anything, then that doesn't work. And then, if we had to ride to the DPW yard, that would just slow us down. You know what I mean? It still doesn't keep us within that 4-minute response time, 4 to 6 minute response time. So, maybe for the second spare or something like that, but even still, even if it's the brush truck or whatever it is, and we need it in a moment's notice, we can't have to travel someplace to go get it and then come back. It just slows us down. And, you see the bumper stickers when seconds count,
that case I understand, but like, let's say I'm having a heart attack, and I know we're gonna move away from Atherton, it's just a medical event. I don't care that an engine is there. I want an EMT and a Ferrari to like get there as fast as possible, right? And so,
yeah, if you're having the heart attack and we send the closest apparatus that we can. And I know that there was questions about EMS in the last one. Why do we send a fire truck to an EMS call? You look at it, a heart attack, you look at anything. Again, we are the first responders, and it's true here in town. We arrive on scene first.
Yep.
So even if it's, again, that I'm not feeling well, and we just send an ambulance, and then they get there and it turns out to be a heart attack and CPR in progress. Well, now they're calling. Now we're behind the 8 ball on that. So we send highly trained people to every call because we don't know what is on the other end of that line.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow.
yeah, no. I'm just thinking about, I still have a hard time getting over it, that we're sending such well-trained people to everything.
I think that's a little off top. But I thought you were also saying, why do we have 5 bays and 4 of them are storage?
And same with that.
Not really storage, the spare isn't storage.
It's really not storage, right? It has to be able to go in
Is
service.
it standard for every fire department to have an engine and a spare at every location?
Pretty much. I talked to the Hingham Fire Chief, who happens to live in town, and we were discussing this, and I asked what they did. So I said, they run 2 engines, a ladder, and 2 ambulances, they're frontline. And I said, what do you have? He said, we have 4 engines, 1 ladder, and 5 ambulances.
Okay.
Randolph is the same. Randolph has 4 engines, they run 2 engines, a ladder, and an ambulance. They have 4 engines, a ladder, and 4 ambulances.
I
So
sort of understand having a spare for like spare parts, but Mr. Walsh implied it's not only spare parts, it's you get in there, you turn the key, it doesn't start, you hop on the other one.
Absolutely.
How often does, my car always starts when I turn the key.
So they are big pieces of equipment, and we buy them, and, you know, Milton is behind the 8 ball. I actually had a chiefs meeting this morning, and this afternoon, and I met with some chiefs from all over, and I asked that question. I said, how often do you replace your engines? And they said, every 10 years. And Milton does it every 15.
Okay.
The front line. So we are 5 years extra, you know, you look at the age of some of these, you know, our spare engine right now is a 1999. It's 26 years old.
Okay.
Our next newest one is 2005. It's 21 years old, and that's front line. It's the piece that's right there. That's the piece that's getting replaced at the end of the month. So you need to have that. So, do they break? Absolutely. You know, when you look at the roads, you look at, you know, they're big trucks. Trucks do break down, and they're meant to run. You know, that's one of the things. You look at diesels and, you know, diesel engines. They're meant to run a long time. You know, they're not supposed to go with that quick start and fast and stop, and fast and stop. You know, that's not what a diesel engine does. But you need the diesel engines for the power to carry all the equipment and the weight of the water. And the weight of the water is the biggest thing. 750 gallons is heavy.
I think what would help me, and then in turn, you know, maybe the rest of the committee, and in turn help town meeting, is again, getting back to the diagram.
Yep.
And saying sort of exactly, you know, once it's built, here's what's gonna fill up these 5 bays at Central. Here's what's, you know, 2 bays at East Milton, that's easy. Here's what's gonna fill out these 5 bays at Atherton. Here's, you know, we've got a boat, here's why we have a boat, here's why we want the boat to be at Atherton, or wherever we want it to be. We have a hazmat thing, here's why we want it to be there instead of somewhere else, instead of in the basement of town hall or something. I think that would help me a lot. I don't know about the rest of the people, and I think it would help town meeting and maybe the rest of the people in this room.
I also think having Chief do the presentation, I think he's very compelling. It's good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for.
Mr. Walsh has his strengths, but I think both of you.
It's
leaning on your
a
strengths.
passion of mine. I mean, obviously, I love what I do, and when everyone says, "Hey, come talk," can you come talk about your job? And I said, "Sure." You know, my wife, you know, I was in the Coast Guard. I flew in helicopters for 4 years or 5 years before I became a firefighter.
We can ask you questions about that for the next hour.
And my wife, you know, I talk about work, and she's like, you know, not everybody loves their jobs. You know, for the last 30 years, I've absolutely loved my jobs, and she's like,
I'm
you know, a lot
talking
of
about
people
my
hate
job,
it.
that's for sure.
But Jay, to answer your question, I'm looking at space and firefighters as finite resources. The question is, like, are we optimizing that?
I think we are. I think we have some highly trained people that do everything, you know, we do a lot. And to send them out, and again, like I said, that you could leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, your shift starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, you could go from one incident to the next incident, to the next incident, to the next incident, and not get back till 2:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I've done it where you go out at, you know, 8 o'clock at night, and, you know, you're getting relieved on scene from a fire or something like that, or, you know, a horrific car accident or something, you know, you're there for 2-3 hours, and you just go to you just, you know, and it happened today, you know, unfortunately, they went to do a fire drill at Tucker School, and next thing you know, we got a call for a building fire. So everyone has to leave whatever they're doing, and sorry, kids, we gotta go do this, you know, so it just happens. You go from run to run to run. You need to have all that equipment, and you need to have, you know, you wanna have highly trained people to show up at your house, and that's what we do.
So
But it's a manpower issue. Is really what it is.
Okay, I want to sort of circle back to the question in front of us, which I don't think we're voting tonight. I can't prevent you from it. Question in front of us is, do we approve $1 million to design and study a fire station? And not only that, but these things have a life of their own. I mean, if they design and study option 3, which is, you know, the 3 bays and the 2 more bays, if they come back with $1 million design for it, town meeting's gonna say, kick it out, make it 4 bays. So it's sort of, we want to start as we want to continue. So we're being asked, do we want to approve that money? And sort of, we're being implicitly asked, do we want to approve that money to study option number 3? Given that, people on this committee, I think we still have the open question of, let's get a really good diagram.
Well,
But
let's-
aside from that,
We can get that ready for town meeting. So,
I'd think better if I saw that.
oh, would you? Okay, you'd rather have that before you vote?
But putting that aside, do we have other questions that are open that we haven't had answered? Think we need?
That's great.
No.
I
Is
agree
this
that you should give
diagram
the
gonna be
presentation
available?
too.
I emailed that to you just 15 minutes ago.
I'm asking like,
Oh, to town
this
meeting?
answers a lot of questions,
This,
I think, and this is super helpful for like.
Okay.
a
And the fire
promotional-
station building committee they have done their homework and
Yeah.
they're all residents. that
It's
have
on
done-
them.
It's
So it's
architects.
So it's available on,
it's-
that's the ones here, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the designs are available on the fire station building
Okay.
committee website too.
That's really
The
helpful.
3 different
I
designs.
do agree that that would be good at town meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
at town
Because
meeting.
we are gonna get that
Yeah.
question like by 5
Specifically.
days.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about raising buildings instead of, building a totally new one? Like, those are the questions that will certainly come up.
And we could, most of the people in this room heard me say when I was recruiting them to be on the warrant committee, I was like, we could talk to the fire chief for 2 hours. I'm gonna try not to. I'm gonna try to respect your time.
I know.
Everyone's time.
I don't mind.
No, everyone's
If there's
time.
any questions, I please.
Everyone's time. So I think-
And Mr. Johnson's been great. If you wanna come visit me at the firehouse and you wanna have more questions, then absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm always open to that. If it's
After
not
you
me,
get a
I can have a
Dalmatian.
deputy chief or somebody.
Only if you get a Dalmatian.
Oh.
You don't want me to go off with,
We have a couple more items I want to get through tonight, so, if that's fine, we'll release our guest.
You guys can store the 1848 steamer in my house.
yes, no, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
I mean, I could send this out to you again.
I have it.
He sent
Right here.
You sent it to
Okay.
us.
Okay.
We have it.
We just sent it.
And I'll work on my artistic, I'm a firefighter, so. Thank you.
God, it's so cool. So I toured the Atherton
It's so
station.
fun.
all right, that's
I was
Okay,
curious,
I
what's
love-
that Atherton?
Oh, you
Yeah,
didn't see
it's
that?
Atherton, because they can't do much with the basement, so they.
Okay, so the other 3 things I know it's 9:00. I'd rather put in a little bit more time tonight. 3 other things I want to talk about tonight are the next 3 things on the agenda. I'm calling it tax title fund. I don't know if that's the right way to call it. The tax credits and the school budget discussion, partly a discussion and partly an airing of all of our questions so that the school committee will be ready to answer our questions a week from now. Yes, Elaine?
In order to save time for that third thing, because we have no new information to offer, although Julia can contradict that if she wants to, could you all just send me your questions by end of business tomorrow? Because school committee would need it that far in advance in order to be able to answer those questions by the time they come visit us next week.
Yeah, we have.
Nick already sent his questions, so I already have those. Jay
sent
sent
you a
his
couple.
questions, so I have those. I had a question that hasn't yet been answered, and so did Julia, that hasn't yet been answered. So we've got some, but if any of the rest of you have questions, please just send them along to me.
And ideally, we'll never achieve this, but ideally, we'll get all our questions to them ahead of time. When they come, they present them to us, and we have no questions, it's all settled. Now, maybe that's unrealistic, but that's the goal. So I know people in this room have questions for the school budget. That's good. And the school budget subcommittee is meeting Wednesday morning. So when we say get them to Elaine, end of business day tomorrow, that really means end of business day tomorrow, because they
Really
have
does,
an 8
because
AM
then at
meeting.
night, I have to write it all up and send it along.
Yeah, because they have an 8 AM meeting the next day, and they're gonna wanna talk about our questions.
Do you go to that meeting?
Yes, I do. And when I can. I mean, it
So-
starts during my workday, so sometimes I have to take an hour of personal time or I have to work late. But yes, Brian, I try to make it.
So,
God bless you.
we can base those questions on, and what material, aside from the discussions that we've had here and the meetings with the school committee and whatnot, we have some materials, I think, right?
Yes.
I feel
We've
like
got so much materials that I can't keep it straight in my head.
Yeah,
So
okay.
what have we shared?
No, and I'll
What
go
have
through
we
my
have?
notes.
Right, Mark Loring shared the budget book with all of us, I think, did he? And that's the most detailed
Okay,
list that we have.
all right, I'll go through that.
So, yeah, that's, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but let's get our questions to them. Does it do any good for us to surprise them with questions when they're in front of us? Let's have an efficient meeting a week from Tuesday, which, yes, I apologize, is St. Patrick's Day.
No, I'm not gonna be there.
Because it's St. Patrick's Day.
No comment.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Okay,
you know,
so is
devil
that, I
is
think that issue
leprechaun.
is settled. So now I'll turn to, well, what's first on the agenda? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Tax title fund that was James Lee.
So, have you guys at least looked at the warrant itself? It's a one-sentence warrant. It's pretty straightforward in terms of what it is. It's to establish a fund to collect, to basically take the fees and any kind of charges that they put towards the collection of any foreclosed properties due to failed tax payments. And so the idea is rather than having to, what's the word for it? There was trying to remember what the phrase is for it. Whatever. So basically they establish a fund, and then that fund is going to be used to pay for all the bills as it relates to the collecting of the funds, right? So pull up my specific notes. This is nice. Everybody's looking at me. Yeah, recording fees, title searches, mailing, publishing legal notices, filing petitions with the land court, process servers, attorney fees, all those things we currently have to appropriate. With the fund, we don't have to do that any longer. The fees that are collected can carry forward year over year, depending on whatever the town sets for it. And so all we're doing is we're voting to say, yes, we want this to actually happen, and then the select board will implement this before the new budget cycle starts, and we have this fund in place, so they don't have to come back to us and say, hey, this is the budget as it relates to the treasurer collecting.
And where's the initial funding coming from? Just from
Currently
these-
comes from our town budget.
No, oh, so we would start it with that budget and then it would roll
Yeah, so it's
Revolve.
basically saying the fund will start, and so the fund will start to collect
after
fees
this initial.
after this,
fundraising.
correct. So once it collects the fees, now we have a fund that can actually be used to pay for all of those things, recording fees and mailings and all
So
those.
it doesn't require us to add more money or like raise money.
That's correct.
Okay.
What happens to the money now? It just goes in the general fund?
Correct.
So do we have to vote currently to use that one?
Yeah, it goes part of the general budget that says that this money will be used by the treasurer in order to pay for all these fees.
So what's the pluses or minuses? I mean, right now, the money goes into the general fund and the money comes out of the general fund in the treasurer's department. Why is this better?
It's supposed to be more efficient because it doesn't have to, we don't have to annually say, this is how much money we're going to be allocating towards this particular service that's being provided by the town. I kind of look at it on the contrarian side, which is if right now we have eyes on it, if there's a fund, we now lose that visibility. I mean, it's still public funds, so we can still ask for it, but it's not going to be the same. And this can happen with any fund that we establish, right? Once you've taken it out of the general budget and say, okay, there's a fund associated with fees, we now no longer see it annually. But
Yeah. I might say it the opposite way, though. I might say it's a little more transparent. If
yeah, this is
a
allocated toward
bucket, the money from, it has fees that come in from this.
Correct, provided you
Yeah.
ask for it, right? Because now it's no longer being discussed.
There would still be reporting on it in the annual report of the town every
That's
year.
correct.
So it's still transparency around it, just you
have
have
to
to
look for it.
shorten the town meeting discussion every year.
That's correct. Yeah, so for all intents and purposes, this is one of those that we more likely do than not do because it'll only benefit us.
Yeah.
But doesn't it, maybe I'm seeing this wrong, but doesn't it reduce flexibility in being able to spend those funds? Because now they're allocated to a particular revolving fund rather than going into the general.
Right, but it's specifically related to the business that's being done. I mean, on the flip side is that you could start to becoming more aggressive about collecting, right, which could increase that fund, but again, or that the fund could be used for something else, like it could become a slush fund, but those are things that we can trust that our select board will not let happen.
That's the transparency, that's what that's all about.
If it gets too large, you can make it free cash.
Yeah, I'm sure if it gets too large, they'll figure out something to do with it.
I mean, occasionally, I'm sure that'll happen, you know, you're expecting to pay some fee, and then you don't actually have to pay it for some reason. And then you get this extra money in the account, or in the fund, right? That never happens, so.
Really does.
We could probably vote on this one.
Yeah, do we have more
so.
questions about this? I will entertain a motion.
Second.
I have not heard a
To
motion,
entertaining it.
I've not heard a motion,
Motion to vote on this tonight.
so that we recommend,
Make a motion to
I'll vote
recommend
to
the town
accept.
vote to accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 16, Section 15B.
Second.
okay, you got that, Karen?
Got it.
Okay,
Article 35.
and now, Karen, can you do a roll call vote?
Elaine,
Abstain.
Jamesley.
Yay.
Did Lorraine leave?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go to Grace.
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Lee Michael.
Yes.
I believe Ron has left. Ron? Okay, Nick,
Yes.
Cecile,
Yes.
and Jay.
Abstain.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Cecile, I have your. Stop sharing. The presentation? Yes, yes, yes. Did I forward that? I can't remember what I forwarded and what I didn't.
Karen helped me.
Yes, I'll take credit for Karen's work. You sent this to me, why am I not seeing it? Oh, because,
I think it's from the Warrant Committee.
what would it have been titled?
Article 36 presentation.
Sunday at 7.
Oh, Sunday, thank you very much. I was looking at Saturday, or I was looking at today. Okay, just a second.
You have it, Jay?
I do.
Okay, I was going to say I could share it.
Having a hard time, slideshow, come on. Okay. You asked about a template for our presentations, Larry.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I'll try to make this quick. Basically, there's Article 36 has two main clauses that we kind of bundle together to vote on. But the gist of it is additional tax exemptions for certain communities. So the first one is targeted around veterans, and then the second one is a more general. So like I think it's like veterans, seniors, surviving spouses, and children. And so I'll go a little more in detail. The article itself is really short, but unfortunately, as I found, it was linking to like a bunch of other clauses in MGL, so it was kind of a wild goose chase. So I attempt to summarize it in this presentation. Next slide. Yeah, I think we can. Next one. So the first one is, I don't remember the exact string, but it's 22I of the law that it's pointing to. And this is a pretty recent clause added to MGL. It's also called the HERO Act. And it's basically a consumer price index increase, so a cost of living adjustment for the exemption on certain qualifying veteran exemptions every year. So there's a list of them, and I made a table in the next slide. But since you guys all have the presentation, we don't have to go into the table. But basically, every year, consumer price index has been going up, and so veterans will be potentially will be able to get higher exemptions every year based on that increase. Next slide, please. So this is a really long table. you guys have it, so if you're curious, I kind of tried to summarize the million different clauses that it was pointing to. The town, in short, the town is responsible for paying the full exemption upfront, and the Commonwealth will reimburse the town for a certain amount for every level. And so these clauses are basically different levels of disability connected with a veteran's time and service. And so Milton in particular has a history of paying out two of these, and they're in bold, so it's clause 22 and clause 22E. For both of these, Milton's responsibility is $175 of the total credit, which is either 400 or 1,000, depending on the clause. Does that make sense?
$175 per year. Per-
Yes. And I have a little more detail on that for Milton later. All right, so
Yes, it's just so I'm clear, I'm a little confused. So like 22E, 6,000 of the property's taxable value. So if their taxes are 10,000, they get 6,000.
So it's whichever is greater, and I think that's the same language for all of these, is basically you get a 6,000 deduction, like your property value minus 6,000. And that's what they determine the tax on, or they get $1,000 credit. So whichever ends up saving them more.
Oh, so it's just 6,000 off the value of the house.
Yeah.
Which isn't that much.
Yeah, so I think it usually ends up being $1,000 credit.
Get it. Okay, thank you.
So I had a bunch of questions. I ended up meeting with Nick Milano, and he helped answer a bunch of them. So the first question was if the exception goes up, is the town responsible for paying the difference with the consumer price index increase? And the answer is yes. The town will absorb the cost of that. So that's I think one of the big callouts for the article. The town is going to be responsible, spoiler alert, for paying for both of the clauses in here. And then if consumer price index goes down, which is like a super hypothetical scenario, do the tax credits also get adjusted? Nick said probably not, it would stay flat. And then how soon would the town be notified of the increase? It will be in March every year for the following fiscal year. So we'll have a few months to adjust and make sure we have enough money. So the second clause is, I think it'll be a bigger financial burden on the town. So this is voting, basically you can vote to add additional tax exemptions on a number of qualified populations. So you can set it for up to 1,000%. In the article currently, it is at 100%. So if you got like $100 exemption, if we pass this and adopt it, they would end up getting a $200 exemption. And so again, there's like a billion different clauses that it links to that would apply here. And I made a summary in the next table. And then there was some language here basically to avoid doing like tax fraud, property fraud with people that qualify. I think basically doubling the exemption for a bunch of folks in Milton. Yeah, so another summary of the clauses that it pointed to. 22 is included, so the veteran credits that we talked about for the last clause. And the other notable ones that are bolded that Milton currently has people applying for are the seniors, the legally blind, and there's like a different senior clause for 41. So these are the ones that Milton is currently paying for, and the town responsibility is slightly different for some of these. So it's not just always $175.
What does full amount mean?
So some of these, and these, I asked Nick about it. He said that Milton doesn't currently have anyone in those categories, but it would be like they would be completely tax exempt.
They would own a house in Milton and pay no property taxes?
I think it's up to a certain like value. The house can be a certain value and below to be fully exempt. But yeah, I think these are not.
How do you double that?
We don't. That was another one of my questions.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't double something that is just like a full amount.
Okay. 5 or?
So can I just, if if you're a veteran, if you're serving in the war, you don't have to pay any taxes also. That's another one.
For
56,
active, you mean?
active duty in foreign countries.
Yeah,
Oh,
it said
it's
up to 100%. I don't know exactly what that means in practice. And I don't think it, like, anyone in Milton currently, when I asked Nick, like, falls under that category, but I can ask him for clarification.
Did you ask him before last week?
Yeah, right. 20-year-old boy.
Yeah, I talked to him.
No, that was,
Yeah, I know.
Are both of these clauses means tested?
Can you?
Does anybody who falls under the category, regardless of their net worth, qualify, or?
So what's written in MGL, I think, is based on the value of the property.
Irrespective of whether or not somebody
I
has a
didn't
means?
see anything about. It's interesting.
That's strange. 'Cause
That's really interesting.
does that mean everybody above 70 years old?
I would have to go back and read it.
Is, so, I mean, Jesus, I don't really pay attention to my taxes, you know, I mean, I just can't make my mortgage payment, and taxes come out of it, I mean, how would this be, how would you did fall into one of these categories, I guess you'd have to
You apply.
apply, okay. And then,
I definitely, I mean, I've had a conversation with Nick and he said, oh, the veterans agent's job is to find people who are qualified for this. And we've got a new veterans agent who told Nick, if I do my job well, you'll be paying more of
That's right.
this and, you know, the currently existing programs. Just throwing that out there.
Do we know the overall cost of this to the town?
Yeah, I have a slide.
That's, okay. What do we have? Oh, hey.
Yeah, what it means for Milton. Yeah, so I did a little like just basic scenario for a single person. So scenario 22 is the $400 credit. The town responsibility is $175. This is the current town payment. So if we choose to adopt both of these clauses with Article 36, that means that for 22nd I, the town will end up paying, be responsible for 180.60 cents because we're also paying the difference based on the cost of living increase. Sorry, this is a hypothetical of 1.4% increase in consumer price index, which was based on last year's data. So there's a slight increase of town responsibility per applicant here. The second one, I think, will be the bigger town responsibility because we're basically doubling the exemption and we're doubling it after the cost of living increase if we accept the first one. So the last line is basically what the town would be responsible for this one scenario if we double it. And the money is coming from the overlay fund, which I have some data on that as well later on. But Nick thought that the current amount that is going in and coming out, like we should be able to accommodate for adopting both of these as well.
So without this, we pay 175. With this, we pay 586.
Yeah.
So it's triple-ish, give or take? Yeah, somewhere on the order of triple, a little bit higher.
That's per applicant, 586 per applicant, so that's,
How many people in town fit this do we know?
Yeah, I have a.
Oh, okay, great.
Can I peek? What do we have?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Nick was kind enough to share the data from the last 5 fiscal years on exemptions. So the raw table that he shared is on the bottom. There's not a lot of exemptions, and so the bar chart is kind of a lot of data, but I thought it was easier for me to visualize at least than the raw table. The bars is the total amount that the town has paid in exemptions. And then the lines are the counts, so the number of applications for exemptions. So
it's 83,000 we paid last year,
That's not so bad.
2025?
A reduction in town revenue, basically.
Yeah.
Of $3,000.
So this money is coming from the overlay fund. I'm not super familiar with that, but from what I understand, it's allocated from the taxes that we get every year. The Board of Assessors allocates money to the overlay fund. So I think it's not
So we'd
exactly
still
just.
collect the taxes, but then take it from this fund to pay these people back? We're repaying them the taxes they paid? Is that what you're saying?
So I think I would need to look up. I can get the answer there.
Because that's what Nick's getting at, is like, is it decreasing in the revenue, or is it just coming from another fund after we get the money?
Yeah, okay, so does the overlay fund count towards town revenue today? Because that's where it came from.
I hadn't thought about those terms yet. So it's either a reduction in town revenue or it's redistributing taxes to other people.
Exactly.
Either way, it's
Oh,
$100,000.
I see what you're saying.
Right? It's $100,000 for a good cause. Feels like it's something to support.
You're saying it might be, we collect the same amount of taxes as a town, but everybody else's tax goes up by a little bit because theirs goes down.
It's like the financial aid chant for colleges.
Yeah, that is good to know if it, which way it works. You understand the
But
question?
you're saying that, I don't think she's saying the taxes are going up necessarily.
Well, it could be for the people that don't qualify for the, if you, I don't know the answer, right? So either the town just collects less in taxes by that amount, or the town collects the same amount of taxes, those people just pay less, that means everybody else pays more to
Well,
collect the same
effectively,
amount
I
of tax.
guess, yeah.
Milton collects less.
Yeah, I think it's probably more.
And so these numbers are actual numbers, so these are before the increase?
Yeah, this is historical data.
Okay.
Yeah, so no cost of living adjustment, no doubling.
Well, but also not reflecting this proposed law.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
you said what I.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
So this is an estimate, it's $83,000, is that correct? So we're saying.
That's it's actual.
No, that was the actual.
Ex-actual from last year.
Fiscal year 25.
Okay, so
What was the projection on 25B if these new, if
Yeah,
these
we
new
had-
proposals were in place? How
I
much
thought
would
about
we
doing
have
that
paid?
calculation and I was like, it's a Saturday.
Yeah.
I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I can check with Nick if he's already done that
I
calculation.
certainly think before town meeting,
Yeah,
we should
should
do
have
that.
something
Now,
like
whether
that.
we should do that before we vote, maybe a different question. James, you were raising your hand?
No, I'm just looking at- Brian, can we go back 2 slides?
What it means for Milton.
Well, one more. That one. So this is all the things that it covers. So I'm not sure, like, class 17 is for seniors 70 plus. Everybody that's a senior that's 70 plus gets $2,000 off on their taxes. Is that what that means?
There's a property value.
Their property value goes down $2,000.
yeah, that doesn't, those numbers don't, it's gotta be more than whatever it
No,
was.
there's so if your
43.
property is above a certain value, this doesn't qualify.
Oh, I see.
And so I guess, so if the house is worth, say it's $70,000, which probably doesn't exist, but it would be $68,000. Is that what you're saying? Is that what that means?
So if you would tax it, you would calculate it as 68,000.
Sorry, it's,
And they have to be 70. So they could get up to 175 off. If we should get the values of what the houses would be, because I'd be curious on that.
Yeah, like what's the threshold, because the
Yeah.
values in
It's
this.
in the
yeah, it's
MGL
not
plus.
8,000 or 20,000.
I would prefer to see means testing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we get a
This
choice.
is MGL, like,
It's
we can't-
Mass General Law.
So we have,
We do what they propose or we don't do what they propose.
And these are the ones bolded, like we have been paying, like doing
doing
those
them.
exemptions. So, and we're not voting on whether we're doing those exemptions.
so
The
we,
increase.
Sorry, so what's new then?
We're voting on
The
if they double it.
the doubling of it.
Doubling and the
Yeah.
cost of living increase.
in theory, reject it and come up with our own set of guidelines, or
Probably not.
if we don't adopt MGL, we can create our own, like, 70% or like.
I don't know,
I'm
but
trying
I
to
doubt the
understand.
town of Milton, I mean, we charge residential properties at X amount per thousand. I don't know if we could just come up with our own, unless you're over 85. I'm not making a joke. I'm not making a joke.
I'm trying to understand.
I'm not making a joke. I doubt we could come up with our own thing like that. I think there's a mass general law thing you want to adopt or not. I think.
Because I think some sort of credit is the humane and right thing to do, right? I'm a little scared at the uncapped, unknown variable for the second.
Well, I think when we talk about unknown, I mean, this example costs approximately triple.
Correct.
So if last year it cost 80, call it 80,000, triple that. 200, yeah, 240, so a difference of 160,000. Ballpark, and I think we should refine that before town meeting.
So are we gonna be presenting this before town meeting, or is the proposing, like, so I guess select board's proposing this?
Sometimes we don't present.
Good
things.
question. I think I like to hear myself talk. I think it's prudent for the warrant committee, certainly for something like this, for us to get up, we say, town meeting, we know so much about your finances, let's explain this and kill them with information, not only this, but then, also how much it will cost.
Sure, yeah, if we're presenting, I can definitely see if we can get a projection.
From where I sit, it seems kind of palatable in the scheme of the overall town budget, but if it was $300,000, that would be meaningful in closing school budget gap that we've been talking about.
And that's,
So,
Yeah.
just to put it in context, like, there's the two schools of thought to that perspective.
Well, that also goes back to are we reducing the town revenue, or are we reallocating?
Right,
That's a good question.
I guess we need that answer.
we do need that.
And if this gets back to, I think, something Andrew was getting at, and if this is for anybody, regardless of income, I know you said that their house can't be worth their house can only be worth so much. But if it's for everybody regardless of income, then that also shapes what I would say about this.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would want to see what that is, those values.
because somebody that owns 5 houses and has 8 million saved.
Oh, yeah, you just reminded, thank you. It has to be your primary residence.
So it's only on
It doesn't
that
matter,
one?
but if you have like 7 vacation homes elsewhere, like, to me, why do they deserve a tax
I-
credit? I'd
I
rather
agree,
create a,
100%.
Do you think people, like, is it a realistic scenario where someone's property is like, the cap is pretty low on the, so their primary residence is this house that's worth not that much money, and then they're like
save
having like
20 million, that's
multi-million-dollar-
really possible.
To save 20 million, what are you talking about?
No,
To
no,
save-
no,
What are you
no,
talking-
no, meaning
what are-
like they have
So
like
what are you
$20
talking
million
about,
of
like,
assets
what's
and they're
low,
modest.
the cap? You mean how
Well-
much they can get
Well, they have
back?
to pay
I mean, it's
property
possible,
taxes.
but they're only
They can
saving
only get the
175 a
credit
year.
if their house is worth up to a certain amount.
Okay.
I'm trying to pull it up, but
Yeah, no, but what Andrew's saying, I think it's relevant because the net worth of somebody, I think, should dictate whether they
Well,
get this or not, to a certain extent,
I'll
not
say-
just their service.
Andrew and Brian were here last year. We had a similar but different issue last year. And we sort of spent a lot of time talking about it, but what it ends up with is the Mass General Law says what it says. And we can adopt it or we can't. But the people on Beacon Hill and their wisdom have written the rule this way.
Right, but aren't we talking about doubling what the
We
master,
are.
so that's
We
my
are.
concern, is doubling that, what's in place is what's in place.
That was important, though, knowing what that was last year, because it was really low, and you realized very few people could get it, and the people that could get it should get it. So we knew what that was. So that's how we
But then
made
there was
that
also
decision last year.
speculation about people owning Cape houses and gold bars, and we went.
Yeah, but that was relevant, though. We talked about
Why are
that.
we proposing to double it as a
Right,
town?
yeah,
so Nick said it was just an opportunity to give more tax breaks to, like, frankly, like, people who might need them.
Yeah, but I would rather say, let's allocate 250 grand and create a pool that people could
they can
apply
apply
to rather
for, I
than
agree.
Yeah.
blanket.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's the right answer. It is just that
No, it's fair.
unknown numbers scare me.
I agree.
Because
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
that's a
100%.
permanent risk that we're taking.
The ones on the second page. No, sorry, the bottom of this page, those numbers are gonna be very limited and for narrow periods of time, at least for the third of the 3 rows there, right? It's the one at the top that is the most open-ended, surviving 70 plus, seniors are 70 plus, which is, part of the demographic, I think, in this town that's growing, right? And then their surviving spouses or minor children of a deceased parent. Minor children of any deceased parent. So like, if you're 3 years old and your parents are 35 and the minor child stays in the house, or I don't know how that works.
No, it's, you have minor children and one of the parents is dead. And they-
Okay,
and
okay.
their property value is of a certain amount.
Yeah, but that's their surviving spouse. It's like you're double counting.
Double counting what?
If it's a surviving spouse, on the first row, right?
And the
70
minor
plus surviving spouses or minor children of deceased parent. So wouldn't the minor children of a deceased parent, if it's one parent, that would be a surviving spouse?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, if the minor children, it's whoever is
Who's
the
the
property
survivor,
owner.
yeah.
But you could also have situations where there is a spouse, surviving spouse with no minor children.
Yeah, okay, I get that, sure.
Yeah, and then the minor children aren't generally gonna be the property owners if
Well,
they
yeah.
happen to be. I don't know how
Right.
if that's even possible.
But
Then
senior
they-
70
just
plus
have
is
a-
open-ended.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I wanna see the values. This is,
clear?
But yeah, I mean,
No, you can.
we had so we had the total numbers.
But not a minor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for the property.
Like,
I guess we just need the
can't
numbers
double
of the
count
property
consent.
values.
What's that?
Yeah, and when I look at the second section of what's proposed to us, it's all lumped together. So it's not like we're asking town meeting to say adopt this and this and this and this and this. We're asking town meeting to adopt one thing that covers all of these. So
And we
saying-
can't cherry pick off this list, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'd ask Cecile, the expert, but.
And then, what about, I mean, property values keep going up and up and up in this town? I mean, eventually, is there just not gonna be anybody that's,
Can afford to live there.
or that's gonna be?
That too.
That too,
I mean, it
exactly.
seems like the numbers are gonna drop.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this graph, like, the number of exemptions have not been going up over
Yeah.
the years.
That's probably why.
No, I know, but to Nick's point, when we have excess money, like we've got school budget issues, like, not that this isn't important, but shouldn't we be thinking about how do we close the gap in the budget
I
than trying to
think,
add more
yeah, I
tax
think a big
exemptions?
question I want to get answered is, can we allocate money from the overlay budget to schools? Because if we cannot, then that's not really.
I think, here's one thing I'm seeing. The one we're concerned about is number 17. Go down here. How many people take number 17? 2, 3, 4, 8, 10.
And it's going back in
Oh,
time.
it's going down now.
It's going
Yeah.
up.
No, it goes
going
from
up.
10, no,
Oh,
no.
yeah.
Well,
it's
17
2
is
in the
going
most
up.
recent year.
No, that's
Oh,
21.
no, it's going down,
So-
oh, yeah, okay,
I don't know how many 70-year-olds we have in town, but I think it's more than 2.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
this isn't all the 70-year-olds, if that makes people feel better.
And it was only for a
No,
total
it
of
means that
560.
There's an
There's
open
more
risk that
opportunity, yeah,
people become aware of it and every 70-year-old now applies for it.
if they're
And still,
qualified.
so, but only if you're, I mean, we,
All the 70-year-olds
The other
who
numbers,
can
yeah.
apply
It's-
to
yeah.
class 17, so.
So, sorry, what are the other criteria if you're over 70 that make you eligible?
I
You have
would
to
have to go back to
serve,
read
you have to be a service.
No, that's only 22.
Only
It's property
22.
value.
22, and
Oh,
that
this
one
is
doesn't have
all-
age limit.
Yeah, your property value can't be too high, but I don't know what the limit is. I'd be
There is
curious
a
to know
limit.
what that is.
Because that would, because that would take this open-ended thing and make it closed-ended, and it's a lot easier to support it there. Though I think we still have to wrestle with, if you tripled it to 300, that's still meaningful in the school budget, even though maybe it's less meaningful overall to the overall town budget. At least then you don't have an open-ended issue.
Yeah, if anyone has internet access.
I don't.
I'm trying to pull, I've been trying to pull section 22I, which should just answer the questions, but it's not loading for me.
Yeah,
I've got it
it's spotty.
Yeah.
Say 20, what did you say? 22?
So it's like MGL 59 is really long, but it's like, if you look for 22I, I think you should be able to.
I mean, I'm trying to get on 59, it's kind of stuck.
Anyone at home have better internet than we do?
It's just Karen.
Oh, Mr. Milano. Oh, Mr. Milano is here.
Oh.
Please, speak. Share your wisdom. Did you,
I just haven't quite followed what the specific question is.
how much have you heard? I guess part of the question, do you see my screen right now? Part of the question is, we're wondering about clause 17, which seems to say seniors over the age of 70 get an exemption of $175 a year. We don't know if that's fully accurate.
It's a value limit of, there's a, asset limit of $20,000, that's applicable. So not everybody would be eligible.
I'm sorry, say that again, please?
There's an asset limit, that applies to clause 17 of $20,000.
What does an asset limit mean?
Oh, that's why
Total
nobody
assets.
qualifies for it.
No, I'm asking Nick, what does an asset limit mean?
So it's just any kind of assets that you might have on the books. So,
So you're bankrupt, pretty much?
correct.
It could be anything.
But people are getting,
That changes
It's
things.
for property taxes, so you'd have to own property
right,
in
Yeah.
excess of $20,000.
Yeah. Mr. Milano, this implies someone's owning a house, so they've got some sort of assets.
No, isn't it? If they have assets more than $20,000,
How could you own a house and not have assets more than
Yeah,
$20,000?
in this town,
you could be a renter.
Then you don't pay
we
property
don't have
taxes.
taxes, property taxes,
Right.
yeah.
You own a very small house.
It doesn't appear.
you
Want a piece of land on the corner, that's what you
I
want.
mean, I got a cardboard box.
Exactly.
You live under.
Are we stumping you, Mr. Milano, or thinking?
No, sorry, I was just trying to pull up a more specific answer on it because I have a sheet and I am just pulling it up now. All right, sorry about that. Clause 17, seniors, surviving spouses and minors. It's a small exemption in terms of dollar value. Senior must be age 70. Minor child is somebody with a deceased parent. Total net worth may not exceed a DOR value of $77,000. That excludes the assessed value of the domicile.
Okay.
So it's a net worth valuation of $77,000. That's the cap. That it does not include the house that is that you live in.
Oh,
I could
so
see
it's
that then.
assets outside of the home.
Yeah, outside
Okay.
of your property,
All right.
which is, that's
Okay.
what.
But it doesn't give any specifics, I feel like I'm talking to the wizard or something. It doesn't give any specifics about the value of the house. What can the house be worth?
It's excluded.
Excluded,
It
yeah.
is excluded. That's correct.
Completely
Yep.
excluded. So I could own a house worth $1 million and have very little else in terms of assets.
Because you've gifted it away to your children.
Pension actuary and.
It's
wants
true.
that
It's the
for
house
pensions,
itself is such
but
an asset.
And you
I
get
mean,
That's true. You can give it away to
$2,000.
everybody.
security or employment pension,
Give it away
but
to
I-
everybody, put somebody
So
else's
what
name.
you're considering that. You would know.
Right, but
To
you
To
can sell
be
your
clear,
house
the
and buy
exemption,
something cheaper.
Cash flow. I don't think it's an asset.
Okay.
the exemption is $175. So I just want to, I know there's 2,000 or 175. It's 175
Thank you.
in terms of the exemption amount.
well, it says 2,000 or 175. What
Well,
is it?
2,000 of property value, 175 of dollar value.
Oh, the 170.
So, Mr. Milano, we're also noticing that this clause 17, we've had 2 people, 3 people, 4 people in recent years claiming it. Some people in the room thought, well, if every 70-year-old can get it, there's gonna be a rush for the, I don't know, a run on the bank. But do you think how much is this publicized, Mr. Milano? Are there a lot of people who are eligible for this that just don't know about it? Do you know? Can you say?
I don't have a good handle in terms of knowledge of it. They've been in place for forever. They're statewide, so every city and town has this specific exemption. Milton's not alone in that. We do some, public notification stuff through the Council on Aging, but beyond that, I would say we're all over the place about them. So I don't know that the public awareness is superb. But again, there are asset limitations both to this, to clause 41. And the other thing to remember on all of these is you can get one of these, not multiples. So,
Does that answer, we had a lot of questions about clause 17 especially, does that answer the questions?
The top line.
I have another question.
Okay.
Most people have savings for retirement, which would be considered an asset. However, if I have a pension coming to me, that's not, and that goes over my lifetime, it's not my money, it's not my asset, I just get paid every month. Does that count toward assets?
It's a better question for the assessor's office. I can check in with that.
I don't see how you could,
Yeah, I don't see how you could either.
because
Yeah,
you
'cause
don't
it's
know what the
not-
lifespan of
Sorry.
a person
Right,
is, so
correct.
what's the value?
401K
So,
though,
yeah.
yeah. Is an asset,
401K.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you plans.
But not social security.
No, Social Security.
Right.
Supposed to
There
be
was
what-
I
also
agree with the group.
question.
I know you had more slides. Should we?
Yeah, but I think while Nick is here,
Okay.
Can you go back
Nick had a question about,
3 more? I'm sorry, go ahead.
so Nick, you had a question about the overlay money. Is it coming out of the general?
Yeah, my question is it a reduction of revenue or an increase in, cost to the town?
I would phrase it a little differently. Is it a reduction in the total revenue that the town collects, or is it a redistribution? These people's taxes go down, everybody else's goes up a little bit. That's what I
The
thought.
latter.
Okay,
The overlay is not technically appropriated by the town meeting. We account for it when we're building the budget in terms of a contribution into the overlay as a non-appropriated item in the budget. You know, it is set by the Board of Assessors. The contribution into the overlay is set by the Board of Assessors when we set the tax rate, which happens annually in like middle to late November. So it's kind of one of the last elements of the budget, but it is an expenditure out of the tax levy essentially directly into the overlay. And then tax abatements, tax exemptions are paid out of the overlay. Overlay is occasionally also released back to the general fund if it is at a value that we don't need, or it gets to like a reserve level that the assessors don't need. They can vote to release it back to the general fund, and that happens on a fairly regular basis, where money will go in, and then the needs go down, money will be released, money will go in, and then on we go.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I got confused several minutes ago. I don't know about the other people in this room. Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted you. Maybe everybody else is following you perfectly.
Nope.
But I wonder, if we're talking a few $100,000, as we all know, a few $100,000 could make the difference between, the FY27 budget being happy or not happy. Is it less money in the budget that we have to spend? Or is it just that everybody else in town pays a little bit more and the budget is still the same size? The operating budget.
No, if the need for money to go into the overlay increases significantly, then yes, it would reduce available revenue to be spent on other items.
Thank you.
Does that, yeah, I think, sorry, that I think is what you're getting after. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think it's not the answer we wanted, but if that's the answer that it is, then thank you.
It's a tough one.
So it's $82,000 or probably double.
Or triple.
I'd like to vote.
Should we go through the rest of Cecile's?
They're pretty
Slides.
quick.
Alright.
Yeah, so this was just a screenshot of the current overlay worksheet that
Oh,
they sent
great.
over.
It's useful. Thank you.
So on the right, the little table on the right is the abatements and exemptions. So it's a little bit higher than the graph you saw because it's also counting abatements.
Okay.
So yeah, and you can see the total budget on the left.
Okay. I'll admit I don't fully understand.
I'm sorry, yeah. So what is it? So we're collecting $2.4 million and we're only paying out, it's like about $100,000 or $200,000 each year? Am I reading that right? Or am I reading that totally wrong?
I don't know what I'm looking at.
Average abatements and
Very
exemptions.
good.
Yeah,
Next to
that's
the
the
G.
the abatements, yeah. So 172.
And so 172 on average each year.
over a 5-year period.
That number isn't over 5 years.
Well,
Oh,
five
yeah,
years,
yeah,
that'll be
Yeah,
5-year
that's an
average.
average, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
So
gonna
what's the-
double.
So what's the 2.4 billion, 2.4 million overlay available? Is the overlay used for something else besides this?
We just have 2.4 million sitting there? Mr. Milano,
I mean, that's
we don't,
crazy.
we don't know what this is.
Yes, so as you, so you gotta take the top and the bottom. So the top is telling you what's available today. The 172 is the 5-year average that they say you're likely to need based on what you've actually contributed out. So in excess of that is the $2.3 million. So it's the 2.476 minus the 172 gets you to 2.3. And then if you look at potential future liabilities, this is the amount that the Department of Revenue suggests that the overlay be at least in excess of this total. So tax receivables at the end of fiscal 25 are 1.3 million. Personal property tax receivables are the 148. And then the pending ATB cases is a liability that sits out there. We have a appeal from Winter Valley Equity House about their nonprofit status that is working its way through the ATB process. It's valued at $292,000, so we're required to keep that. So the $1.78 million is potentially the maximum exposure the overlay has. So the Department of Revenue strongly recommends the overlay balance be in excess of that. And the number that kind of bounces around the most that throws this off on a year-to-year basis is that receivables figure. As you can see this year, or at June 30, 25, it was 1.3 million. At June 30 of the prior year, it was 1.6 million. So there's that flux that bounces around. So sometimes we're a little bit in excess of the minimum and sometimes we're right on it. For example, last year, the Department of Revenue had a warning on us that our overlay balance did not cover our potential liabilities. So it's a number that we try to target, and it fluctuates depending on where things land on fiscal year end.
So I have a question. So out of the 2.3 million, 1.7 has to be fully allocated to cover these potential liabilities. So leaves a little bit more than 500,000 to do with. Is that what you're saying? In this overlay?
Correct. And as I indicated before, the Board of Assessors, this is what I mean by release. So if by the time we approach the end of this fiscal year, the board feels that the overlay balance is sufficient, they could choose to release money out of it. Or alternatively, not put as much into it when we set the tax rate. So those are ways to manage the balance in the fund. Right now, it's a little bit high. I shouldn't say it's high. It's in excess of what we need. At June 30 of the prior year, we were below what we needed.
Do we have to hold for receivables because we might not collect those?
Yes, that's the concept.
Okay.
But,
Okay. So it's
so
already
that,
paid.
that's all good, but if I understand this, the average over the last 5 years that should show up in the warrant as an item, budget item, is $172,000. And that's, under this proposal, gonna double.
Which would take up more of that excess.
Right.
Yep.
But the
So we end up like
excess is
250.
500, so we're
Yep.
still good.
No, but
Yeah.
not even counting the excess, right? Because that 172 is
No, but
in
that'll
the
go,
warrant every
that'll,
year?
if you double that, it'll take out of the 2.3. And then there'll be less excess.
Unless you increase the amount that's allocated in the warrant to double that, to 350.
If you increase it, yeah.
But I think it's gonna more than double.
Yeah, triple.
Yeah.
That was, the proposal was double, the proposal was a triple?
No, so it through.
Town's responsible for all of the increase.
Okay.
And I would like to just point out the what you're seeing here, the 5-year average is abatements plus exemptions. So as you can see, fiscal 21 and 22, it probably more abatements than typical in the wake of the COVID effect on real estate tax, property values and commercial values in that time. But as you can see, that kind of has dissipated a bit. So Cecile showed the exemption amount, which is the amount that would be potentially doubled or increased, not necessarily the numbers you're seeing here in the summary level, because again, that rolls in those abatements.
So that's the $82,000 that you had before. Right? So it's 82 could triple to 240.
Right.
As a line item in the budget, a charge that we have to make in the warrant every year. Is that right? Is that what I'm
Right.
hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Should I go to the next slide? Cecile?
Sure, yeah.
Other towns.
Yeah,
This is
so
tiny,
just
Cecile.
other towns in Massachusetts that have adopted these. There's a number that adopted in the last year, 22I, which is the cost of living increase. And then if you go to the next slide, there are also a number of towns that have adopted 5C.5, which is the 100% increase. The ones in bold, so Lexington, Belmont, and Needham have adopted both of the ones that we just talked about. And I think Belmont was pretty recent.
Are these examples or are these the only ones?
These were the ones I found.
Okay.
I can't say they're the exhaustive list, but,
Okay, that's
yeah.
fine.
And that's just appendix, cost
CPI?
of living, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Luke has his hand raised.
So should we?
Mr. Milano, is your hand still up? You can just speak.
Thanks. I just wanted to add one piece here is that the warrant in terms of 55, it's the second one, and I always forget the numbering, and I'm sorry, Cecilia, you probably have it, but 5C.5, is that it?
Yeah.
So that one, I just wanted to make sure the warrant committee understood that it doesn't have to be 100% in terms, it doesn't have to be doubled. That is where towns have some decision to choose what the additional exemption will be. As proposed, it's proposed to be at 100%, but it could be 50%, which it takes, it increases your exemption by 50% rather than doubling it. So I did just want to make sure you understood that was an element of the article that is the town's election and the town's choice.
Thank you for telling us that. All right. Elaine?
I have to go. But before I do, I just want to thank Cecile for dealing with that particular article because it gave me a popsicle headache, just like trying to
Yeah,
read
no
it.
kidding.
So,
You did a good job, really good job.
Fantastic.
Are we voting or?
Do we have other questions, committee?
I hate to ask a question because I know it's late. I want to leave too, but, there's no.
I gotta go.
But like, this is a lot. Can you go back 3 slides to that list? That one, yeah. So I just want to be clear. First one is, okay, we got that. 22 is the HERO Act. The next one's legally blind, 70 years old plus. I think the one that's like 41, 41B, 41C, 41.
Okay.
What is the value on that? There's got to be a means test on that one, right? I guess it's a question on the other ones, like, what are the mean tests,
Mr. Milano, do you have that?
But yes, hang on one second. It's got an income and an asset limitation. So income is less than 35,000 a year. Assets are less than 57 for a single person, and then for a married, it's $52,000 on income and $61,000 on assets.
Okay. So.
Or clause 41.
Tested. All right. Committee, do we have other questions? Do we feel prepared to have a motion tonight? One answer might be, it's 10 o'clock, we don't want to vote right now, and
Yeah.
let's vote it.
Do we even have a quorum anymore?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I'm sure
we still need 8 for quorum, and I'm counting 8 in this room, so.
Oh, okay.
Would someone like to either make a motion or informally propose that we just think about this another night?
I make a motion, we think about this overnight.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's gonna change my mind, but
That's not gonna change my mind either, so, nor,
Probably not.
I know.
If someone would like to make a motion,
Yeah, go for it.
Motion.
Do it, Andrew, do it.
With the motion to vote on this, is that the motion?
why don't we motion,
Well, I mean, it seems weird to not do it with,
yeah, I
To not
make a
do it.
motion to, I don't wanna adopt it, but I make a motion to vote on,
well, you'd be moving to adopt. You could move and then vote no.
yeah, so I move to adopt
the word.
the warrant articles
as
and
printed
the
here.
recommendations as written on the screen.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, I will open it up to discussion. I'm a little surprised to hear informally that someone's not supporting it. Would someone like to say why they do or don't support it?
I'm gonna vote in favor of it. I think that the people that are gonna benefit from this, have earned it and are the, I think typically longstanding residents of the town under the different categories that are listed there. And it seems like a small gesture on the behalf of the town, to support those people that seem like they would need the extra support. And I think the trade-off against, say, the benefit of that extra revenue for the schools, it's a trade-off that seems worthwhile to me. So I'm gonna vote in favor of that.
Thank you.
So I will say that, I think it's a good, idea. I think the doubling of it is a problem for me because I do think we should look at putting money towards schools and areas of the budget that are in deficit to try and make it more equitable.
For me, it's not our only option. We can draft draft a warrant article that achieves the same purpose without the same type of impact or sort of unknown cap. Why can't we create a fund to fund tax payments for people that qualify under similar?
Yeah, Mr. Milano, are you still with us?
I am here.
Yeah, the question did come up earlier. Rather than adopting the Mass General Law that says do these things, can we come up with our own way to reduce taxes of certain people that we find as
Or a
being
fixed
deserving?
pool and follow these guidelines.
Mr. Milano?
Yes, but it wouldn't be a local action, I don't believe. I think it would have to be a home rule petition that is approved by the town meeting and then submitted to the legislature for adoption. So I don't know that we can locally affect. My recollection is you can't locally change or institute exemptions at the local level only. You need the legislature's approval and permission to do so.
Really? I mean, we could create a relief fund, right?
You gotta figure out how
Correct.
to administer it.
I mean, it's still money that wouldn't be
still
going
money,
into taxes. I don't
yeah.
really understand how that would help.
Okay.
So I guess I'll chime in, to address both comments. One, to address Andrew's comment. I mean, I don't know if within this town, we have the expertise and the inclination to draft our own bylaw rather than rely on the wisdom of the people of Beacon Hill who've come up with these rules. That's my thought. And to address what Nick said, I agree that, these people deserve, I think is the word you said, deserve these credits. I look at, it's unclear if we're a high tax town or a medium tax town, but we do keep having to have overrides to go back to the residents to fund the town benefits. And maybe the people on this list, maybe the 70-year-olds who don't have any assets, maybe they're not enjoying the library like we do. They're certainly probably not enjoying the public schools. They're still paying taxes. And anything we can do to offset the overrides, which have come in the past and will certainly come in the future, offset the impact for the overrides, even though I'm sure this will all be forgotten when the override comes back up. I think it's morally the correct thing to do, even if we won't get the political credit for it. I think it's the correct thing to do. So we have a motion, we have a second, we're having discussion. Is there more discussion before we vote?
I'm sorry, I just have one more question. So, I mean, we're really voting on doubling it, right? The exception is still gonna exist
Right.
to these people. But now we're talking about doubling it. Are we also voting on pegging it to CPI?
We're voting on the whole package.
Okay, and it's not currently pegged to CPI? Right, okay. All right, well, that's important.
Brian, did you have
I think it's a, low means, and I think it's hard to say no to this, because I think those people, it's tough. That being said, I do think there are issues with the town's budget. I don't know that they go together, how we budget and managing the funds and everything else, that's all a separate matter. But I think that's an issue too, but that's a separate issue. But I think these are people in this town. There's not a lot of them, but I think they probably need it.
No, it's
Time to say
hard.
no.
Can you scroll down?
Yeah.
Was there a second part to it?
We can do a short version and a long version.
What I hate is that we have to make this choice, and that it's so many more people are gonna be affected by cutting school budget as opposed to benefiting this, and that's what I don't like about this situation.
I guess one thing my brain is going back to several months ago when I think we had a presentation on the Council on Aging, and I said I wanted to rain money down on the Council of Aging because the people like myself who have kids in the public schools get a lot of benefit from the taxes. And the seniors are paying as much or more taxes than I am, and they're not getting as much benefit from the town. So I would love it if we had a gold-plated Council on Aging, so we would all share from what we pay in. And this is not exactly the same thing. This isn't giving money to Council on Aging, but it's effectively giving money to seniors and disabled people and veterans.
Right, but we did just set up a fund for tax relief for seniors at the last warrant.
We did, and that's an optional fund. I don't know how that's gone.
Yeah. To help with that.
That's why I struggle with it, but it's, the flip side of that is that that's a choice you make when you're in a good school district, right? And you know that you're paying high taxes.
Well, I mean, we're focusing on the 70-plus senior citizens. There's a lot of other people that are eligible under these provisions. You know, if you're a family member of a firefighter or policeman that died in service, you know, I think there's a lot of broad-based support that goes with this, and we're focused on one aspect of it.
I understand.
Okay, we've had a motion, we've had a second, we've had discussion. So if there's not more discussion, Karen, can you do a roll call vote?
Can I just confirm that, was the motion to recommend that the town vote to approve
Yeah.
as presented?
Correct.
Okay, all right, the wording got it away from me there, sorry. Okay, I believe Elaine has left, so James Lee,
Yes.
Grace,
No?
Larry,
Yes.
Andrew,
I don't want to do this, but I don't want to abstain either. I'm just going to say no.
I believe Julia has left, Julia? Okay, Brian,
Yes.
Lee Michael, I believe, has left. Nick,
Yes.
Cecile, Cecile?
Cecile abstained.
Oh, okay, I couldn't hear, sorry. And Jay?
I will abstain.
Okay, the motion, you have 4 yes, 2 no, 2 abstentions. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank all of you. This was a tough discussion, and I
Yeah.
appreciate all the thought that went into it.
Jesus.
Very
That was
much.
that was a hard decision.
No,
I'm glad it passed.
It was a very thoughtful discussion, and I appreciate it.
That's what did it for me. I'm like, okay, well, it's pegging it to CPI.
Again, please send your questions for the school committee to Elaine et al. By tomorrow, end of day. And we will have a Zoom-only meeting on Wednesday.
Wednesday or
agenda
Thursday?
for Wednesday.
2 days from today, Wednesday.
Why is that, Jay?
I think.
I was like, maybe
Yeah,
it was
okay.
Positive.
I do like it better, actually.
You adjourned? Did you move to adjourn?
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion, so
I think
moved.
everyone's standing up, and that indicates they want to adjourn.
Lost a quorum.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, we should